Good evening, everybody. I'm Matt Dillahunty. This is the Hang Up right here on the line. And what am I hung up about this week? Well, depending on who you talk to, I'm either a sufferer of Trump derangement syndrome or I'm somebody who's pointing out the people who are truly suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. I love the fact that the name of this has been coined to suggest that, those on the left were deranged in their, treatment and consideration of Trump. And yet, the continued evidence seems to suggest that it is the Trump supporters that are the ones that are deranged, and that Hillary was right with the basket of deplorables comment from the get-go. Trump's been convicted by a jury of his peers of 34 felony counts. Some left-leaning folks were upset that the best they could get him for was a hush money trial, because everybody looks at it as, this is a hush money trial. It's not that big a deal. I mean, yeah, he cheated. He wanted to cover it up. It's hush money. Tons of rich people do this type of stuff all the time. There's a couple of serious mistakes there in that thinking. The first is that this is about getting him, and the best way to get him was a hush money trial. This is actually about justice, and calling this a hush money trial diminishes what actually took place, which is that money was hidden and moved around illegally as an illegal campaign donation to protect Trump from potential consequences and hide this story in order to defraud the voters and make sure that the voters did not have access to the information of Stormy Daniels' story. If you're running for president, you are under the scrutiny and the eye of everybody, and news organizations are going to post all sorts of things, and the public has a right to know who you are, what your character is, what you've done, etc., because they're trying to pick, well, I don't know what that noise is. If they're trying to pick a person to be their representative in Washington, to be the leader of the free world, leader of the nation. And if you are presenting a facade to the public and paying money illegally through illegal campaign donations by manipulating the books in order to keep the public from learning who you really are, that's where we get to felony counts. Now, in addition, there are other cases that Trump's going to be having to face, or potentially not face, depending on how a number of other cases come down. For example, the Florida case has been delayed. The Florida case is essentially being overseen by federal judge Eileen Cannon, who's a Trump appointee, who has continued to delay decisions until there are so many decisions stacked up that her own delays have now given her a backlog, so that she's had to move the trial date a couple of different times. And now she's suggested that she's open to new hearings on whether or not this prosecution is illegal or not by inviting briefs. She's doing things that no other judge has, well, almost no other judge has ever even thought of doing. And there may be a mini day-and-a-half trial coming up to determine if this prosecution is legal or not. And it's not just all about Trump either. Hunter Biden's on trial right now. I think it's like day 3. And my understanding of the case is essentially that he's being charged with federal gun crimes for basically buying a gun while lying about whether or not he was a drug addict. It seems, from my cursory look at the evidence and the accusations against him, that Hunter Biden is just guilty as fuck. That he's a drug addict. He knew it. People around him knew it. And he lied, essentially, while, buying and owning guns and things like that. I don't know, though. I'm not sitting on the jury, and I'm not able to watch and listen to everything that goes on there. But my cursory assessment is that he's probably guilty. And if he is guilty, he's not above the law either, and should pay whatever penalty and fine, jail time, whatever it may be. There's additional legal troubles for Hunter Biden because the right has decided that since they view the legal challenges or the legal cases against Trump to be weaponized judicial system, that these are all politically motivated, that even if Trump did this stuff, even if he defrauded the public, even if he lied about where money was, even if he, list all the potential things he could, even if he did it, it's no big deal. Nobody should be prosecuted for this. We just let it slide. And so that all of the cases against Trump are political. That's the right's, or a good chunk of the right's view on this. It's difficult to generalize now, although we're so divided that the generalizations may be more accurate than ever. And so while I'm in favor of saying nobody's above the law, Trump's now guilty of 34 felony counts. And I hope that the judge imposes a just sentence. I know that it's going to be appealed. I know that we're going to fight a number of different things. We're actually also waiting on the Supreme Court to rule on a number of different things. The Supreme Court needs to rule on whether or not abortion is permissible in health emergencies. They're also going to be ruling on whether or not there's a right or legal allowance, I'm not completely sure about the language of it, for access to the abortion pill mifepristone. And we're waiting for them to rule on whether or not Trump's claim of absolute immunity should stand. That decision from the Supreme Court is going to impact the Florida case and the Georgia case, and may have an impact on the New York case's sentencing. And it's not just all about what happens in the courtroom either. The Senate voted on a right to contraception bill, and it needed 60 votes to pass, but it only got 51 votes, 51-39. And so the Right to Contraception Act would have codified the right to have contraception as a part of federal law. And I find it strange and bizarre that we need to codify a right to get medicine, as if we aren't already permitted to have bodily autonomy and governance over our bodies, and to work in conjunction with medical experts and medical ethicists to take drugs that are currently legal, instead of dealing with whether or not those drugs should be legal, instead of listening to the experts, instead of allowing doctors and medical ethicists to make the sorts of decisions to actually determine what rights people have as far as individual medications. We're now debating whether or not you should even have a right to contraception. Do you have a right to protect yourself from pregnancy? And we couldn't pass that bill. 51-39. Today, the Georgia Court of Appeals indefinitely paused the Georgia trial. For those who aren't following along, the New York trial is awaiting sentencing. That's supposed to happen July 11th. That is about falsifying records in order to hide the hush money payments, in order to defraud the public of information they should have had access to, in order to win the 2016 election. The Florida case is the classified documents case, where Trump basically stored a bunch of classified documents in a bathroom in Mar-a-Lago. But the real problem is that because other people have stored those as well. For example, Biden had documents that he shouldn't have still had. And when that was discovered, he just turned them over. Trump didn't turn them over. Trump tried to keep them, tried to act as if, no, I'm allowed to these. No, this. And this is why there ended up being a search warrant. And the real derangement is not only with former President Trump, but also his followers and complete buffoons like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Because like every standard FBI search warrant, it lists what sort of force is or isn't allowed. And because the order allowed for deadly force, which, by the way, is the same order that they used when searching Biden's facility. The same force was authorized there. So this was deadly force authorized, blah, 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 is in both of them. And they waited until Trump wasn't even there to implement this. So it's the dumbest assassination attempt ever. And yet The real people who are truly Trumpian and deranged are suggesting that this was an attempted assassination. Are you out of your yes, you are. You are just out of your fucking minds. But the Georgia Court of Appeals has indefinitely paused the Georgia case, and that case is about subverting the election. I'm not going to go over all of it because we're going to have a rundown. I'm hoping to get Andrew Seidel on as some of these decisions come in. He's busy this week. But the Georgia case, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis brought the case. And Fani Willis also had an affair with the special prosecutor that she hired to lead the case, Nathan Wade. You know, I wish people would just stop. Every time there's a problem, it goes back to money or sex. This one goes to both. Because Trump's team wants Fani Willis disqualified from the case because the romantic relationship that she had with Nathan Wade, who's the special prosecutor that she hired, is one where she benefited financially. Their claim is that because they were off having illicit vacations and Nathan paid for those, then she benefited financially because he paid for vacations. Judge Scott McAfee found that there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove that she benefited financially from this relationship, and that was supposed to be the end of it. And McAfee allowed her to continue prosecuting the case if Nathan Wade stepped down, which he did. And we all thought, wow, they really fucked this up, but maybe we can get back on track. If y'all want to go get your freak on, but keep it out of the workplace and try to keep it from destroying fucking democracy in the process. But Nathan Wade stepped out. Fani Willis gets to continue. So that's not good enough, evidently. And so an appeals court, or the Georgia Court of Appeals, has decided that the case is on hold until a panel of judges rules on whether or not Fani Willis should be disqualified. A judge, Judge Scott McAfee, has already ruled on this, but that's not good enough for the Court of Appeals, so they've stuck a pin in this entire case. They're expected to make a ruling. This court, or this panel of judges, should be making a ruling by March of 2025, which means this case probably won't happen prior to the election and may not happen at all. The Florida case probably won't happen prior to the election and may not happen at all. And while we're waiting for the Supreme Court, we are also awaiting sentencing. And in the process, there's been this retaliation. Republicans, in part because they're deranged, and in part because they've been lied to and misinformed, and in part because they're bitter little bitches, think that the legal system has been weaponized against Trump, when in reality, he's just a lying, vicious, nasty felon who broke the law and deserves whatever's coming to him. But in retaliation, they've decided that, all right, y'all want to play that game? We're going to weaponize the legal system. We're going to go after, we're going to file so much. We're going to just flood you with paperwork and all sorts of anything that we can try to tag anybody with anywhere. And cool. If they broke the law, nobody's above the law. But they think that this was the legal system being weaponized against Trump. And it's easy to think that. As a matter of fact, I've had folks on the left go, if you don't think this was weaponized and politicized, you're the one with Trump derangement syndrome. No, I understand that there are plenty of people who hate Trump for very good reasons and would like to see him in jail, fined, prevented from ever being the leader of the United States again. Yeah. But if you're guilty, you're guilty. You can't just weaponize the system to send an innocent man to prison in ways that this was done. Oh, this was a sham. It was a kangaroo court. No, it wasn't. It wasn't either of those things. And the judge in the New York case has been just about as lenient as possible after Trump violated the gag order 9 or 10 times and never served a day in jail. contempt charges. It's a mess. Any of us who were happy with the verdict, instead of just celebrating that justice was done, we have Trump derangement syndrome, according to the right. The real Trump derangement syndrome is the cult-like worship of a lying felon who cheated on every wife he's ever had, attempted to cheat and pay pennies on the dollar of what he owed business partners many times, cheated on his property taxes, cheated the public out of relevant information in order to win the 2016 presidential election, and then claims that everybody else is cheating and out to get him. But tonight, we're still going to take calls on theism, humanism, black nonbelievers, secularism. How do we make the world a better place, more secular, less toxic, and more? Or is that the right way? If you think that Trump is the wave of the future and that Christianity, which to me seems to be a tool for manipulating voters to vote against their best interest and against equality and justice, if you think that Christianity is actually a good thing, by all means, call in to defend it. My good friend from Georgia and from Black Nonbelievers, Mandisa Thomas, is here with me this evening. Please give her a wonderful welcome. Have you been panicking over all of these trials and Fani Willis and the Georgia crap, or are you just kind of riding it out?
First, let me say, hey, it's so good to be back, Matt. I have missed you. I have missed us being on the show. It is absolutely a pleasure to be back, and thank you for watching. So let me just say that as a native New Yorker and who was still a kid at the time that Trump was bullying the city of New York for the tax abatement for building Trump Towers, and seeing all of the people who actually aspire to be like him, even though we know he is a serious criminal, a serious psychopath, and such. You know, I was a teenager. I was in high school when the Central Park 5 case came to light in New York. You know, there were 5 black men who were, or five young, at the time, they were young men who were falsely accused of rape in Central Park. Trump called for the death penalty for them.
Yeah.
There was absolutely
took out a big ad. Took out a big ad, full-page ad.
Yeah. Now, he had nothing to do with the court system at all, but he saw fit to, make his statements, on this case, even though he was being criminal, even towards the city of New York, and like you said, other business partners, and to his family, to his wife at the time, and so on and so forth. I remember that. Many of our memories are long when it comes to that. And I also, as you were speaking, the 2016 election and the race came to mind when he was basically saying that Hillary Clinton should be thrown in jail because of the email situation. Now, it just seems to be that not only are the criminal acts a part of his and his followers, pattern or their psyche, it's also the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Because how dare they try to say that the system is now being weaponized against them when they've actually benefited from that system for years? Now you're sitting up here acting as if you are the victim. But yet you have victimized so many people over decades. Trump has ruined quite a few people's lives. And clearly he isn't going to stop until that time comes for him. And of course, I'm trying to be mindful of, the algorithms here until he can no longer, speak for himself or what have you. He's a piece of shit. We can definitely say that. But clearly, he is not going to stop bullying. He is not going to stop intimidation. He is not going to stop being his own mob, that are used to, lying, like you said, cheating, stealing from people. He is all of those things. And unfortunately, the general, not just the general public, but definitely, like you said, his followers. It's more than just, I think it's kind of a shame at times that we get caught up on, like you said, the sex thing, because that's so salacious, right? It's like, ooh, but you're missing the point of the deeper issue here. Like you said, like when Bill Clinton was impeached, when he was in office, it wasn't that, part of the problem was that Monica Lewinsky was giving him a blowjob in his office. But the other part was that he was trying to cover up and trying to silence anyone who he had dealings with, either before his time in office or during his time in office, because Paula Jones was suing him. So he was trying to keep them quiet, and that was the problem. It was cover-up of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing. I don't give a shit who Trump has spanking with a magazine or anything else, provided he's engaged in consensual sex. And honestly, I think probably Melania doesn't care either. And for all I know, they have an arrangement. I mean, if I was married to Trump, I'd be like, you go fuck whoever you want. Yeah, just leave me alone.
Right.
We'll stay in separate bedrooms. I'll be your trophy wife. I'll give birth to, a child who, by the way, evidently is freakishly tall. I saw a picture of Barron the other day. It looks like he's like 6'5", 6'6". I mean, he's just huge. But in Clinton's case, so with Trump, nobody's saying that having sex with a porn star should disqualify him, or at least nobody should be saying. Nobody should be saying that paying hush money to a porn star should impact whether or not he can be president or anything else. Clinton paid hush money as well. The difference is Clinton did it legally on the books, and Trump, because he's working with sleazeball lawyers like Michael Cohen, did it in an illegal way so that it became a campaign donation. And people are like, well, yeah, but, if he'd have done it right, we wouldn't be having this trial. Correct. And he wouldn't and shouldn't have been convicted if he'd have done it right. I'd have just said, yep, he's a despicable human being, but he hasn't done anything disqualifying. He hasn't, committed a felony. And by the way, even being convicted of a felony isn't disqualifying. He still gets to run for president. He can't pardon himself for the state crimes because of the limitations of the law. But that, if he wins, that's the big question that, I talked to Jimmy earlier today. I said, I'm alternating between pessimism and optimism. And he was found guilty of all 34 charges, and I was incredibly optimistic. And then the other things come in and I'm incredibly pessimistic. And I'd like to balance that by just being realistic. But I don't know what realistic looks like anymore. And if Trump wins the presidency, I genuinely don't know what the world becomes, or whether or not I give up on trying to address these issues or not. This is bizarre to me. I'm lost.
Yeah, it is bizarre, but it's also for some of us who have seen Trump get away with murder for all of these years. It just seems like it's almost another chapter. And yes, there are things that are catching up to him, as they should have, again, decades ago. I think many of us didn't think that he would be elected, considering all of the sleazebag stuff that he said.
Oh yeah,
during the campaign. I mean, in front of everybody. Yeah, on stage.
I was on stage with Richard Dawkins 2 weeks or so before the 2016 election in Canada, and people were like, do you think Trump's going to win? And I was like, no, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There's absolutely no way Trump's going to win. And boy, it's the most wrong I've ever been. And I'm just completely out of touch. I was monumentally wrong.
Yeah, and it's for some of us, we were disappointed, but it wasn't surprising. It really wasn't. And even with the way former President Trump handled, and that's me being gracious, even like calling him that, geez. The way he handled the pandemic and the crisis, that was taking place in 2020, that it really could have been averted had he listened to the officials at the Centers for Disease Control and got it under control. And like you said, if people are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, it is his followers. It's all the people who felt like, well, the pandemic, COVID was a hoax. People's lives aren't really in danger. We're just gonna, it's just gonna be business as usual. Meanwhile, people were dying. Yep. People were, suffering from long-term effects. There were economic crises as a result. So it's the hypocrisy for me. It's the lack of definitely introspection for me. It's like, do you not understand? Clearly you don't understand that you are basically, if you look in the mirror and you're pointing the finger, you be pointing the finger at yourself. And it's so unfortunate that those double standards still tend to benefit rich white men in power. Not just simply white men in power, rich white men in power. Or people who have the perception of being rich. Because like we said, Trump has never, like, he's always he's defaulted on all of his debts. Again, he's bullied people, and it is mind-boggling. And I think he said he did the crime. He illegally covered that up. And my thing is, well, you're so loud and proud about every other damn thing you do. You're open with, he was open with blatant about his other affairs, blatant about the way he treated people. But, again, when it came to this presidency, we already know you're not squeaky clean, sir. People already know that, and you've shown it.
And it's weird because the whole reason they wouldn't have needed Stormy to testify in this case if it weren't for the fact that Trump denied the relationship entirely.
Right.
And I genuinely, for the guy that's like, grab him by the pussy, I could shoot somebody in the middle of the road, and it's proven true. His followers are cult-like they're comparing him to Jesus. Now, Jesus was also convicted in a sham trial, and I still follow him. And I'm like, you shouldn't follow Jesus either, dumbass. But
right.
This wasn't a sham trial. This was not a sham trial. Not. And it's like, well, given what we know, I think if Trump got access to a time machine, he wouldn't go back and not have sex with Stormy, and he wouldn't go back and change anything other than he probably wouldn't have allowed anybody to pay her off, and he would have just said, hey, yeah, I'm not going to go into details about my sex life. My wife and I are working on becoming president and first lady. We have a wonderful son. To whatever extent I have in the past engaged in cheating or anything else, that's none of your business. It's not relevant to the presidency, and moved on. That would have been, but it's weird what he chooses to try to protect himself from while saying the quiet part out loud 90% of the time.
Right. It's clearly psychopathic behavior. I don't even think it's sociopathic. It's psychopathic. And
yeah, I'm reluctant to try and diagnose him because I don't know. But I get the point.
Yeah. I mean, goodness.
So how are you feeling, given that we now live in a world where the former president has been convicted of 34 felonies, which gave me the feeling that there's some hope of justice, and yet not only has that not necessarily impacted his chances negatively for becoming president again, it may in fact impact them positively. Where is your hope now?
You know, I am like you. I total line between optimism and pessimism because right after the verdicts, he raised over almost $150 million. He received millions of dollars in support after the convictions. And I think it's really, really sad how at times, even in this country, people love to glorify the villain, which he clearly is. And they are so wrapped up in the propaganda that they are willing to, that they are just, I mean, it's truly, truly sad. But what I am hoping, I am hopeful that more people will come to their senses, because we probably didn't even think we would see this in our lifetime, that this man would be convicted of anything he's done. So it is a step in the right direction. It is, like I said, it's well past the time that he is held legally accountable and criminally accountable for things that he has done. But it's unfortunate that, like you said, the fact that he has been able, and he and his team have been able to use other people's, indiscretions and flaws against them it could probably work in his favor. And that is what people like him do. They exploit vulnerabilities of people. They exploit, people who, they can say, like you said, he's, oh, you're going to do this to me. Watch what I do to you. Instead of just accepting the accountability like he should. Of course, he's not going to do it. It always just plays out, unfortunately, just like a recurring, like just bizarre TV show. But then again, that's what he's used to. He's used to being on TV. He's used to being that guy. So for me, I'm just like, we can just do the best we can by, again, because it was the same system that he benefited from that ultimately convicted him. So I think it's important for us and for people to understand that, these things, they can work, because the same electoral college that elected Trump was the same electoral college that elected former President Obama twice, and current President Joe Biden and other presidents. So we do have the power here. There is power that the people have that we need to continue to exercise.
It's sad to say, but because we say it every time, and every time it's been true, this upcoming election is the most important election in the history of the world. You guys have got to go out and vote. You have got to make your voices heard. We have got to do what we can to defend democracy, or we wind up becoming the same sort of banana republic that the delusional Trump supporters think we already are, and that they're trying to make better or greater, while being, Boebert and MTG are dumber than a sack of hammers. It's embarrassing who is and isn't serving in Congress in many of these cases. I wanted to get on to callers, because it's a call-in show, as are all the shows on the line, but I'm going to go ahead and do announcements, and I want Mandisa to make announcements, if for no other reason than the whiny little Noah dude in chat who wanted to know when we were going to callers. I'm going to delay it just to piss him off for another couple minutes. So, Mandy, what do you got to talk about?
Yes. So let me just give the disclaimer that my views previously are of my own. And even though you see the BN insignia behind me, which I proudly display, I was not speaking on behalf of Black Nonbelievers, the organization. I was speaking as Mandisa Thomas, the individual. And I did not say who you should vote for. I was just definitely speaking to facts, because these are facts here about former President Trump. So, but anywho, getting that out of the way. I I just really want to, again, say how glad I am to be back on the show, and also just give y'all an update on Black Nonbelievers and what we've been doing. We've been staying busy. We now have 3 new board members. Last year, we welcomed Deanna Williams to our board, but this year, we also welcomed Chris Cameron, the author of Black Free Thinkers, and also Derek Colanduno. Matt, you know him. He's the director of the Skeptalk at DragonCon.
Yeah.
So he's now on our board, and we have, we've revised our bylaws, and they are published on our website. And so we are working on policies and procedures with the board and our affiliate team, so that we are continuing to do the very important work that we've been doing at Black Nonbelievers, which leads me to our summer drive. We started our mid-year appeal a few days ago. So we would encourage you as a 501c3 organization to make your donation to Black Nonbelievers. We co-sponsor a student scholarship with the Secular Student Alliance. We are working on strategic planning. We do a lot of community outreach. We provide support for a lot of people, not just Black non-religious folks, but the community at large. We had the opportunity to be featured on 2 major platforms, Middle Ground with Jubilee Media, which has 8.6 million followers or subscribers, and also Across Generations with Tiffany Cross, former MSNBC host, the podcast that is produced by Will Packer. And so when people are looking for Black non-religious, Black atheist voices, they come to us, which is very important. Because we are sufficiently providing the resources, the community, and support, and also the collaborations and partnerships that the community needs. And something that you probably, I posted, Matt, but you probably don't know, I need to talk to you about this more. I accepted an invitation to debate Kent Hovind, which will take place next month. So I will be preparing for that. I was a little shocked that I received that invitation, but I said, you know what? I'm very curious about this. And his team actually was insistent that I speak with him. I spoke with him for a few minutes. And when he said that he believes in the Bible, he believes the earth is 6,000 years old and stuff, I was just like, interesting. It's probably something you say to everyone. But I'm preparing myself for this. It'll be my first, it's going to be in at the Dinosaur Adventureland. They offered a free 2-day stay in Repton, Alabama. So I thought, why not take him up on this and at least go there to kind of see be crazy for myself, if you will, to kind of see. And I'm just like, because I've been near the Ark Encounter, but I've never been to it, in Kentucky with Ken Ham's thing. So I know this is his version of the Ark Encounter. And so I thought, wow, this will be very, very interesting. And I'm just like, wow, this will be my first time fully debating this apologist that I know that so many people are familiar with. So I'm just like, atheism versus creationism, pretty much, pretty much the same thing they always do.
Yeah.
But I'm very... Mm-hmm.
When he got out of prison, somebody contacted me on his behalf. I can't even prove that they were on his behalf because I didn't get to talk to him, but they asked me if I would do a debate. And I said, sure. 1, it needs to be freely available to the public. 2, I'm not going to debate evolution. I want him to actually defend some aspect of Christianity. He can still sell the debate and do whatever afterwards, but it needs to be posted free to the public. And they never got back to me.
Wow, interesting.
When you go to prison,
interesting.
For cheating on your ministry's taxes, and when you get out, you reach out to somebody to do a debate. is very clear that he's trying to build up, make some revenue for his ministry. And I was like, I'll do the thing, but I'm not going to help you rebuild your ministry. I want this thing to be available free. And as soon as I said free, they were done.
I need to follow up on that. So, but yeah, I thought it would be pretty interesting. I was reading up on, him going to prison and moving his amusement area from Pensacola, Florida to Repton, Alabama, which I'm sure the laws were probably more favorable to him. But it will, it'll be a very interesting experience. And I will be documenting and chronicling that.
I can't wait.
I'll definitely be doing that. So yay.
I'm gonna be having some fun. So we're gonna get to calls here in just a second. One last thing. I got to announce the other shows on the network, but also it's Pride Month. And
yes.
So, to all of my LGBTQIA plus super crew, enjoy the month. And I hope you piss off a lot of bigots this month. I hope we all do.
Absolutely.
There'll be guests on the show this month, specifically focused on that a little bit. I think you may even get to see the wonderful producer down at the end of the hall joining me later on this month. But as those of you who watch The Line regularly know, this is basically a call-in network. Almost all the shows here are focused on call-ins. Some of them will also do super chats like we will at the end of the night tonight. The Sunday shows tend not to do that. But in addition to this program, the Hang Up right here on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Central. Thursday is the Transatlantic Call-In Show. Tomorrow it's going to start at 2 p.m. Central with Arden and Josie. Then this weekend on the Sunday show, the regular time Sunday show at 4 p.m. Central.
No, it's 2. That's a mistake.
It's 2. That's the typo in there. It's in that spreadsheet every time I look at it. Thank you, hon. 2 o'clock Sunday, it's me and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. The Sunday show after dark is going to start at 7 p.m. as always with Aron and John Gleason. Monday's Skeptalk is going to be Erika Given. And Tuesday's Chewed Gum is going to be Arden and Alyssa Ljub again. And then next Wednesday, oh my goodness, it's going to be me and Arden next Wednesday. We're going to talk some Pride stuff and whatever I happen to be hung up on. But anytime she's here, I just kind of get starry-eyed. So, but she'll be working as the producer and co-host. So, when you're doing double duty, you're probably going to get more of me than you want and less of her than you'd like. But we'll do our best. You ready for some calls?
Absolutely. And in addition to Happy Pride, this is also Juneteenth month. So Happy Juneteenth as well.
Which is also mine and Arden's anniversary is basically, so I went to a show on the 17th. We technically had our first date, I think, on like the 18th, but the 19th is when we actually kind of got together. So it's
yay.
It's a good month all around. All right. We got callers. And normally we do theistic callers first. We currently only have one theistic caller, and there's I've already spoken to this person before. I want to get to them again in a minute, but we're going to start with an atheist caller because they've said something that has piqued my interest. So Alpha in Texas, pronouns are he, him. It says here, you're saying before the Big Bang makes sense. So tell me how, and welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Mandisa. How you guys doing?
All right.
Yeah, so I just wanted to discuss the before the Big Bang, I guess, idea. I hear, I guess, Matt and Forrest talk about how it doesn't make sense. And I understand where you guys are coming from. That's when time and space started. So it makes sense to say before doesn't really make sense. However, if you're thinking about it in terms of maybe our world is like, let's say a simulation or something, like when you play a video game, right? Or you boot up a server. When you boot up a server and you create, let's say, a video game within that server, when that server starts would be when that universe, time and space start. Yeah, so that would be their Big Bang, right?
No, the problem here is not that would be their Big Bang. The Big Bang isn't just when you turn things on. in your analogies of, hey, it's kind of like a video game that just started up or whatever else. Time already existed prior to that video game existing, and that's where the analogies fall apart. If in fact time begins at the beginning of the Big Bang model, then it does not make sense to talk about before the Big Bang. You can't have before time. Before time is itself a contradiction. So sure, but you're sure I've mentioned this. I don't even know why you're calling about this. I've mentioned it virtually every time it's ever come up, which is that maybe there's a meta time, but time from our perspective, just like space from our perspective, originates with Big Bang cosmology. If you want to make an appeal to a special meta time, great, but you have zero evidence for it, and I'm not interested in speculation in order to try to prove a point.
No, what I'm saying is, sure, our time would be, within the simulation, their time, right? So when their time starts, sure, I guess
it's like you didn't even listen.
I did.
Well, it's like you didn't listen because you went back to saying the same bullshit that I just got rid of. So in the simulation, yes, their time starts, but they don't know whether or not their time is the beginning or whether or not there is an hour time. And you don't know whether or not there's a meta time. So you even said it. You said, however, if you think of things in terms of maybe our world is like a video game, I don't give a fuck about maybe. You have to actually demonstrate it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's a fact. I'm just saying if you think about it logically.
No,
I'm not trying to.
Don't. Holy shit. Does it make sense to say before time?
No, and I agree with that.
It doesn't. And until you demonstrate that there is some other meta time, then you are just engaged in idle, useless fucking speculation in order to try to pretend like it makes sense when it doesn't. Do you have anything else, or can I move on?
No, that's it. Sure. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks. I get it. You can posit stuff like this all the time. You can say, well, it might make sense to say before time began, if in fact there's a meta time. Sure. Right. Nobody ever said there wasn't. The point is, you don't have any reason to believe that. So here's the thing for callers. I don't care if you're theist or atheist. I am completely disinterested in your bong hit speculations about reality. The world is on fire. We are losing our rights and our autonomy. We're having the Supreme Court decide if we even have a right to contraception. We have, and people are doing this. They're engaging in these fights over what other people are allowed to do on behalf of their notion of a fucking God and what they think their God wants. How dare you waste time with speculative, yes, but if there's a meta time beyond our time, then saying before the Big Bang would make sense because now we're talking about a meta level and all. I don't fucking care. I will never fucking care. Stop calling me with dumb shit.
Right. And if I may add, Matt, when we talk about the Big Bang Theory and evolution, these are things that the methodology of science and all of the disciplines have researched and studies and have gone back to to actually demonstrate and prove. So, it doesn't even have to be speculated anymore unless people are just in their own little worlds of thinking and just thinking what if. But and you can do that, but it's very irresponsible, like you said, to call into a show about the what ifs, especially when we are dealing with things that you can actually point to that have been researched and that have been studied over years and years and years of time. Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this here?
There are philosophical arguments and discussions that are incredibly important. And if somebody wants to call in and defend the notion that there is a God, or if you wanted to call in and say, here's the evidence for a meta time or meta thing, cool. But if all you've got is maybe, I mean, if people called into the show and said, yeah, but maybe there's a God. Okay, maybe. I don't even know how you determined maybe. I don't know how you determined it's possible, let alone probable or a maybe. But if that's the best you've got is maybe there's a God, I don't give a shit. I mean, that does nothing for me. You know, maybe there are universe farting pixies. Maybe there are invisible Bigfoot and invisible Sasquatch, or Sasquatch that can turn themselves invisible. Maybe that's why we're having such a difficult time and why we keep finding footprints, because they can just, bend the laws of physics. Maybe the Loch Ness Monster is transdimensional and exists in multi-different universes. And so the only time we can actually see him, we could dredge the entirety of Loch Ness and find nothing, because at the time we're dredging it, he's off in another universe. Maybe he's hopping around with Doctor Strange. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, which means I need good reasons to believe something. And the world the way it is, I'm genuinely bored to fucking tears with I'll take a bong rip and sit down and talk speculative stuff in my off time. Don't waste showtime on it. So, we have a caller returning from, I think it was Sunday Show After Dark. Anish in Dubai, pronouns are him, is calling about proving God's existence. So, Anish, welcome. You're on with Mandisa and Matt.
Hello.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm all right. What do you got today?
Matt, last week we had a discussion regarding this argument called argument from limit. You remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So after that, you asked a very genuine question, but I didn't get it back then. So I want to answer that question that left last week.
Okay. What was the question?
Yeah. Now, do you agree to that premises that I presented last week?
No.
3 premises? No, you agreed there must be a necessary being, right?
No. How on earth, Anish, how on earth could you have listened to the call and thought about it and thought that I agreed there must be a necessary being, when in the 20 years that I've done this, I have rejected the phrase necessary being? It's my primary objection every time someone presents an argument from contingency, that even if you could demonstrate that something was contingent, I don't know how you demonstrate that it's contingent on a being. I don't know how you could possibly get that so wrong.
Sorry. You didn't say necessary being. You said why is that necessary thing is God? That was your question, right? In my argument, I actually presented an argument for a necessary thing. It's not a being. And then you ask me why that necessary thing should be a God.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't conceding. I wasn't conceding that there was a necessary thing. I'm saying if there was something that was necessary, what's the justification for saying that it's a God or an agent at all? Yeah. Okay, so hang on. Say what it is that you think is limited and therefore contingent, and then make the case for why it's contingent on a being.
Yeah, there also I made a mistake. From the second premises to the conclusion, I forgot to tell one thing. Because the first premise is anything that has a limit is dependent on something else to define or determine that limit. Okay, that was my first premise. Got it?
Got it.
Okay, second one is everything in the observable world, in materialistic ontology, has some kind of a limit. We can only measure something in terms of mass, momentum, speed, velocity, length, width, so on and so forth. Therefore, everything in the materialistic ontology has some kind of a limit. Therefore, to avoid infinite regress of limited things depending on another limited thing, we will have to come to the conclusion to avoid logical contradiction and 2 laws of logic, law of non-contradiction and law of excluded middle. We will have to come to the conclusion of the existence of a necessary thing outside physical ontology. Got it?
I got it before you even started a week ago. This is a contingency argument. So now you've got three premises, and your structure is already invalid, which destroys the entire argument. But what's next?
Yeah, this is a contingency argument, but using model logic, which means why this particular limit, why not some other limit?
I
which is
don't care
possible in
about
all
modal
possible.
logic, but also you've
Yeah.
already destroyed the validity of your argument by premise 3, which is to avoid an infinite regress, there must be a necessary thing. That is an assertion that breaks the connection. What's the conclusion and what's the justification for it?
Yeah, so if there must be a necessary thing without any arbitrary limits outside physical ontology. Now I will prove why that must be a God, because T-jump, he says this necessary thing could be quantum
Wait.
field.
Did you just reference T-jump?
Yeah, I shouldn't. I don't know. Like, is it forbidden? I don't know. No,
why on earth is your presentation of your argument contingent on some atheist and what they've said? I don't give a fuck what T-jump has ever said. Referencing a person is irrelevant to the argument. You need an argument that is based on premises that is supported by evidence. What T-jump has said is completely irrelevant to everything. So where's your
I will provide
the necessary thing, which I already do not agree with, must be a being that is therefore a God. What's the case for that?
Yeah, this as for this necessary thing, we don't have any other possibilities. There must be a necessary thing to avoid logical contradiction, because we cannot keep on going limited things depending on another limited thing for an infinite regress.
No, I reject that assertion. But even if I accept it, my question is, even if you were correct, where's the demonstration that the necessary thing is a being that we should consider to be God?
Okay, for this I have 3 arguments, like from movement, movement, specificity, and intention. If this necessary thing existed from the beginning, there are only 3 possibilities. Either it is static, which means there is no movement, nothing, it doesn't have anything to do, so it didn't create the extended creation. Okay, it is just static. And the second possibility is it is either ongoing a process of some other mechanical process where it created the universe, in which case we will have to ask where that process started from. It is dependent on a prior law or something. And the third possibility is it intended to create it, which means there is choice over there. So if there are many ways for the universe to be created, there are many ways, mathematical ways, and if it is created
how do you know that there are many ways for the universe to be created? How do you know the universe can be created at all, let alone many different ways?
There are mathematical possibilities. It could be if there is a rock, the rock could be 7 inch, 10 inch, 20 inch. So if
no, that's not what I asked.
Yeah.
How do you know that the universe can be created?
Yeah, because if there is a necessary thing, because universe was created at a particular time. Okay.
No.
That necessary thing is static.
Nope. The existence of something does not mean that it was the intended creation. What's the demonstration that the universe is an intended creation, or that it even could be an intended creation?
Yeah, because the 2 other possibilities are impossible. Because the first possibility is it is static, and if a static
stop. I'm not talking about whether it's static, the cause is static or dynamic. I'm not talking about whether or not the cause is ongoing. I've moved to your claim that it must have had intent. And I'm asking you, what is the demonstration that the universe was the result of an intentional creation, or that it's even possible for the universe to be the result of an intended creation? That's the question.
Yeah.
How do you demonstrate that the universe is possibly and actually the result of intent?
Because using laws of logic, there are only 3 possibilities, and 2 possibilities are out, so we have only 1 possibility out there.
No, sir. What are the 3 possibilities? So one of them is intended. The only other possibility is unintended, right?
Yeah, static and going through a process.
No. You, Anish.
Yeah.
This is, oh my God. A true dichotomy is that it was either intended or not. You say there are three possibilities. One is intended, one is unintended. What's the third one?
It created out of an internal mechanical process where it is already
No.
Yeah.
When I ask you a question, answer that question and stop, because you're going to be wrong every single time, I guarantee you. If we're looking at whether or not the universe is intended, you have to consider the possibility that it was intended or that it was unintended. Those are the only two possibilities. That is a direct logical contradiction. It's either intended or not intended. That is a true dichotomy. There is no third option. Do you have a third option that you can think of? Because you said there were three, and I can only see intended and not intended. What's the third one?
No, because we are not saying intended or not intended. Even without intention, there could be two possibilities.
I just said
without
it. Anish.
Yeah.
Yes. I have here a pair of glasses. I'm wearing them.
Okay.
It's possible that they were an intended creation, and it's possible that they were not intended. Those are the only two possibilities. Either these glasses were intended or they were not intended. Those are the only two possibilities, correct?
Yes.
Great. So why are you saying that it's different for the universe? When I say the universe was either intended or not intended, why are you saying there's a third possibility?
No, there are only two possibilities, intended or not intended.
Thank you for catching up to where I was 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
What's the demonstration? What's the demonstration that the universe was or could be intended?
Okay, so can I explain it once again?
You haven't explained it once yet. What is the case being an intended creation?
Just 1 minute, okay? I will put it again. Like if there is a ultimate necessary thing, and then now we have a creation, a universe out there, okay? That's a fact. And
no, it's not. It is not. I'm not going to let you get away with this bullshit, Anish. You don't get to call it a creation until you've demonstrated that it is a creation. And I'm asking you.
We are living in the universe.
I'm asking you. Keep talking. I'm asking you to demonstrate how you can demonstrate. How can you demonstrate that the universe is possibly intended and actually intended? That's all I want to know.
Okay, I need 1 minute. That's it. If you give me 1 minute, I will explain it. That's what I'm saying. Now we are
I'll
living
bet
in a
you
universe.
$500 that in 1 minute you will not answer this question. Start the clock. Go.
Okay. So now we are in a universe. We are experiencing it. So a universe exists. So and philosophically, I have proven that there must be a necessary thing outside physical ontology. And if we even in atheists believe there is a necessary thing. So some believe that it is quantum field. So if this necessary thing, if it created the extended creation, and if it is a static thing, if it created the extended creation at a particular time, or why did it create at a particular time? Where did that movement begin? How did that movement begin in the first place? So a static thing cannot create anything. And the second option is it already had a mechanical process, like a software or something. Like it is ongoing a process where it created the universe. In which case it is already dependent on a prior law or an event in which it is a process. Okay. The third possibility is it created out of will choice. That explains why one particular way, why not some other way? Because the universe could have been created many other ways. So if it is one particular way, there must be a choice. That's it.
So you owe me $500 because you pointed out that your case was involving three things. One is the necessary cause static or dynamic, and is the necessary cause ongoing or one time? And the third one is the necessary cause an intention or not? And you spent 55 seconds talking about static and dynamic and ongoing versus not, and 0 seconds defending whether it was intended or not. And the only question I asked you is, how do you demonstrate that the universe is possibly intended and actually intended? And you did none of that. And so we're going to move on and not waste any of my time or Mandisa's time or the audience's time. You should go off and think about your argument, because you did not in any way demonstrate the possibility of an intentional creation or the actuality of an intentional creation. And if you would have taken the bet, which you probably didn't, you'd owe me $500. So goodbye. Sorry, Mandisa. This was a
that's fine. I
follow-up.
was also, goodness gracious, yeah. I was, my phone was, my mic was muted earlier. So what I was asking, through all of that, it's interesting how apologists will go into what is scientific and mathematical and logical, but yet they're saying that he actually said he was proving that a God existed, and I'm like, where? According to which doctrine? According to which quote unquote ways that any of these reported beings supposedly created the earth, which has no basis in mathematics or science or logic whatsoever. So, I mean, he failed right there, because according to which doctrine did which God are you talking about? And this is often at the root of our questions.
So first of all, I was looking at my notes in order to have the conversation, so I couldn't see that you were even trying to talk or that you were muted. So my apologies for that. This was a follow-up from a conversation that Anish and I had just the other day. And what's funny to me is Anish's argument, just like any other argument from contingency, is essentially anything with limits is dependent on something else to determine those limits. And so all it is saying, if there's a limit to something, it's limited by something. It is contingent on the thing that's limiting it. The problem is when you talk about, for example, the universe, what the universe is potentially limited in size and age and any number of other things. You can pick something and say, the speed of light in a vacuum, it maxes out here. That's its limit. And that limit is basically dictated not in a prescriptive way, but in a descriptive way by the laws of physics in the known universe. So the question then becomes, where do the limits come from? And his case is that everything that we could point to is either going to be contingent on something else, or we're going to end up in this infinite regressive necessary things, or infinite regressive contingent things. Sorry.
Well, if by that logic, yeah. I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it by that logic, then God is definitely limited. I mean, by all accounts.
No. So God is the unlimited assertion that they used to stop the infinite regress. They're saying everything else is contingent, but God isn't. And it's fine. If you want to define God as unlimited and not contingent, you can do that. You can't demonstrate that non-contingent being exists, which is why when he said, either the necessary cause, if it exists. So let me run through this real quick for folks and we just get to another call.
Yeah.
If there's a limit, there must be a limiting factor. Everything in the material universe has a limit that we can measure to some extent, which means that everything in the observable universe is limited, and it needs to be limited by something. To avoid an infinite regress, there must be an unlimited thing, a necessary thing on which everything is contingent, and that necessary thing must itself be without limits. Otherwise, you'd have an infinite regress. The problem with his argument is one. First of all, you're asserting there's a problem with an infinite regress without demonstrating that that's the case. Also, infinite regress, every single time it's used, is a confusion because we don't work backwards through time that way. You can, in fact, have a stopping point. But also, whatever the limits of the visible universe are, how do you demonstrate that that those limits don't merely exist as a function of the properties of the universe, or as the first caller did, the speculative potential properties of a meta universe. And so even if we were to concede that everything in the universe has limits and must be limited by something, my question then was, why do you think that that limiting thing is a thinking agent who acted with intent? Now, he made a case of why it needs to be dynamic and not static. And I'm fine with that. If in fact there was a necessary being or necessary thing or necessary X that serves as a foundation for everything to be contingent on, I could see why that might potentially be dynamic, but it could also be a static event that kicked things off and said, here's the way it is. And then everything proceeds out from that. Then his case was whether or not it's ongoing or a one-time event. And he seems to think it needs to be ongoing. And then it's, it was an intentional creation. Except that all of those are just assertions. You haven't made the case for any of them.
Right. Nothing
and
demonstrable.
You need to make the case for all of them.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so when I asked him to defend this, he gets to, well, some people believe in quantum states. And if there's a static, then if it's static, then why did it occur at that time? Which is also a problematic thing to say, why did it occur at this time instead of another time is not solved by appealing to God. Why did God create the universe when he did instead of when he didn't? I mean,
right.
Yeah. Oh, because that's when he decided to do it. Well, congratulations. You've answered absolutely nothing. Anyway, we got other callers. Let's have some fun. Michaela in Georgia, pronouns are they, them, is a theist wanting to explain their belief in the belief about or in, I guess. Which one is it about the Black Hebrew movement, Michaela?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hi. Oh, hi. How's it going?
Good.
Good. Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about the Black Hebrew movement. So I'm a bit nervous. I catch my breath here. So there's the Black Hebrew movement. It's always been a movement that's been considered very fringe, right? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people with like big platforms who kind of misguided, misrepresented this ideology. It's a great ideology that's been bastardized.
It's a lot great of people ideology.
What's great about it, Michaela? The Hebrew Israelites believe that they are descended from, like the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah, can you explain the Black Hebrew Israelite ideology for those who may not be aware?
Oh, absolutely. So basically, the whole purpose of what we believe in is to shed light and bring attention to how white supremacy has always wanted to erase the impact and achievements of African folks, right? And essentially, we have really good reasons to believe that we are their descendants. So one thing I would like to point out is in the slave record. This is well documented. If you look in the slave record, you will see slaves who had Hebrew names, right? And on top of that, in ancient Rome, there was this genocide against Jewish folks. And it was like 1 million of them that migrated into West Africa. So we do have some strong claims. I'm going to try not to use the Bible too much here.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, Michaela, I'm sorry if I may interrupt here. The Hebrew Israelite doctrine does not even acknowledge Africa as the birthplace of mankind. So I'm confused about that as well. They do not even acknowledge themselves as being descended from the continent of Africa, as history and science have shown. And I'm curious as to which slave records you are referring to, as far as which slaves had Hebrew names, considering that most of the majority of the enslaved or the captives that came over were from West Africa that had traditional beliefs or their own beliefs. So yes, please do start there.
Oh, absolutely. I had just had it pulled up. That's a good point. Yeah, I accidentally closed it out. I'm about to pull it up right now. There's a book on Amazon about it. It's called the Igbos, talking about the Igbo people. It's a book that's, this is kind of what I'm using as a source. The Hebrew exiles from Israel. It was done by I'm sorry.
It was that's a story that's, I guess, in the Bible. That was. Are you referring to an actual historical event?
So, just for clarification, I guess what I really want to argue here is that what the scripture says is lining up with like more actual evidence that we have. So, in Deuteronomy, it does speak. Deuteronomy clearly. Well, Deuteronomy tells us that essentially, if the Israelites, black folks, if we disobey God's commandments, we will be cursed. And if we obey his commandments, we, will be rewarded and all that. And essentially, the reason, so it accurately, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. We're trying. We're listening.
Yeah. So basically, the Bible has accurately predicted chattel slavery because it says that you will be returned to Egypt. And when it says Egypt, it's talking about America, and we know it's talking about America.
Whoa. I can't even say enough woes. First of all, the Bible doesn't predict chattel slavery. It actually endorses it and gives specific rules on it about who to enslave, how to enslave them, everything else. But when you're saying that when the Bible says you'll be returned to Egypt, it's really talking about the United States. What's the fucking justification for that?
Well, basically, it mentions an eagle, and the eagle is the symbol of America. And then it says, you will be enslaved for 400 years. And that's how long chattel slavery lasted in the States.
But again, Michaela, I'm trying to understand because, again, the Hebrew Israel, there is nothing you didn't cite any historical reference. You said you weren't going to try to use the Bible, but then you did.
Right.
There were no historical references of any of the
Michaela,
enslaved.
you got to turn the stream off. We can hear the stream in the background. I can hear myself laugh. I can hear Mandisa. Turn it off.
Is that? I think it was my volume was a little higher.
Turn it off.
Better?
Just turn it off.
Yeah. So I have the YouTube muted.
You didn't have YouTube muted because I can hear it.
Not before. Yeah. So according to the historic, if we look at the transatlantic, we're referring to, when you're referring to the enslavement in the United States, we're referring to the transatlantic slave trade, in which the majority, if not all, of the Africans who were trafficked over to the United States were from the western part of the continent of Africa.
Right.
Do you know that's true? So how are you getting Egypt? How are you getting? So there was an Islamic slave trade on the eastern coast of Africa in like the 1400s. And that is what accounts for many of those countries being Islamic, Muslim practicing and Muslim speaking. However, when we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade, that was a product of the Catholic Church. That was endorsed by the Catholic Church, which is Christianity. So we're confused about where Egypt comes into play here when it comes to the United States in the transatlantic slave trade. And also, again, it goes back to my point of the Hebrew Israelites. And I'm originally from New York, so I've spoken with Hebrew Israelites before. They do not acknowledge Africa as being the origin of civilization, even though that has been proven through science and history. Y'all don't acknowledge that. So I find it very interesting that y'all are talking about white supremacy, considering that y'all don't even acknowledge yourselves as being Africans.
Right. So, okay. Let me be just a tad bit more honest with my intentions.
Sure.
My goal here was to take up so I have this philosophy that the best way to prove yourself right is to try to prove yourself wrong. Right. So my goal here was to really try to argue from their perspective.
So
if that's okay.
If you fail to prove yourself wrong, does that mean you're right?
Yes, I can't prove
No, it doesn't. You failing to prove yourself wrong doesn't mean you're right. And even if nobody on the planet can prove you wrong, that doesn't mean you're right. But definitely, if you don't think you've proved yourself wrong, that definitely doesn't mean that you've proved yourself right. Give me chapter and verse for the Bible verse about the eagle that you mentioned.
Sure. I know it's somewhere in Deuteronomy 28, but I'll.
Deuteronomy 28, because when I do a search for eagle, I'm not finding. So 28:49, the Lord will bring a nation against you from far away, from the end of the earth, swooping down like the eagle, a nation whose language you do not understand. Is that the verse?
Yes.
That verse does not say that the eagle is the representation of that land. But why would you think that the notion that there was a verse about an eagle being representative of the nation, why would you think that would apply to a nation that wouldn't be created for, I don't know, millennia afterwards, when and make it the United States, when the golden eagle is the national animal of Austria, the national bird of Albania, Mexico, Kazakhstan, Scotland, Serbia, Germany, the African fish eagle for Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, the harpy eagle for Panama, the Javan hawk eagle for Indonesia, the Philippine eagle for the Philippines, and the white-tailed eagle for Poland. So why is it that you get to take a verse that doesn't say that an eagle is the representation of this nation and make it apply to the United States specifically, when other nations have the eagle as their national bird, and the verse doesn't say that anyway?
Right. Totally. That's a really good point. And the reason why I really just wanted to hear your guys' perspectives on the Hebrew Israelite ideology, because I live with someone who actually is in this ideology.
Wait,
and it's
clearly, Michaela, with all
someone, I thought you were advocating the ideology, and now it sounds like you don't advocate it, but you live with somebody who does.
Right. So my goal was to try to argue on their behalf. And for me, this was a thought experiment. If that was okay with you guys?
No, it's not.
Well, it isn't. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
Here's the problem, Michaela, and I'm gonna stay in complete Zen mode and just let you off the hook. I absolutely despise people who try to argue for a position that they don't hold, and the reason for that is the best you could ever do is muddy the waters. It's like, I don't want fake Christians to call in to try to defend Christianity. I don't want atheists calling in to try to defend Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism. I don't want people who aren't Black Hebrew Israelites, an advocate of that belief system, to defend it. Because if I spend my time knocking down your incredibly simplistic arguments, I've done nothing to deal with an actual defender of a Black Hebrew Israelite. I've basically taken out someone who's being a straw man.
If I may add to that, Michaela, with all due respect. Oh, okay. Well, let me just say this. From what I know of the Hebrew Israelites and everything that she called in to try to defend and justify, you need to run. The Hebrew Israelites, like many denominations, are a cult. And they are not kind to women, like most of them are, but they are especially dogmatic towards women. You need to run, with all due respect.
There's evidently an extremist wing of that Hebrew Israelite movement that the Southern Poverty Law Center is labeled as a black supremacist hate group. I think I ran into some of them down on 6th Street in Austin. Their theology is, I mean, it's problematic. Yeah, what Mandisa said, go look into it because it's definitely problematic for women, for sure. But
and it's all over the place, Matt. I mean, it's all over the place. Like I said, they are emphatic. They are adamant that mankind and black folks did not come from Africa. Like I said, they are, you know, they stand on that, which we know is scientifically untrue. Yes.
I mean, of all the things that Dawkins might have popularized, the "We Are All Africans" shirt, I thought was actually really important because you're talking about the cradle of civilization, you're talking about our evolutionary history, and that's the sort of thing that should make people go, you know, give them an eye-opening moment so that we focus on the similarities and not the differences. Because, you know, Tony Penn, who's got a new book out, and I can't wait to read it. Tony Penn taught me years ago to stop saying things like "I don't see color," because when you say that, it completely diminishes the reality. I definitely see color. Anybody watching right now? I'm a pasty ass white guy, and Mandisa is a beautiful black woman, and we can see color, and it would be a disservice to all of us to fail to recognize that our lived experience is going to be different. And it's going to be different whether we're in New York, Georgia, Texas, or Russia, Ukraine, you know, any place like that, that there's a broad spectrum to deal with. And when you say, oh, I don't see color, well, congratulations on, you know, thinking that you are beyond reality. But when you say that, you're denying the harsh reality that there are still massive differences in people's lived experiences that are based on color and perceptions of color.
Absolutely. And this is this is a sore spot for me, Matt, because when I was 14, I had the opportunity to go on a youth trip to Ghana. And so we got to see firsthand the slave castles of where the Africans were kept before they were forced onto the ships, where many of them died even before getting on the ships. And so when you have, and I'm going to say this, and I don't care who doesn't like it, when you have the black folks who deny this history and who deny the facts of it, the facts of the horrors, and mistake, mistake historical records, mistake historical facts, that's a problem. That is very much a problem. And also that it was very much justified by the very religious texts that they're trying to defend. So there was so much in, like I said, trafficking, and just historical horrors that have taken place. These are human rights violations that we're talking about here. And for folks to not understand the results of that, why we deal with institutional racism, why we deal with all of these things, when you come with these assertions that have no basis in evidence, you have not looked at history at all, and our history at all, I have a serious problem with that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to challenge you on that, because for one, there was just so much misinformation and miseducation in that, and what Michaela brought here. And yes, I take that very, very seriously, as everyone should. So,
well, we've got Leonard in Germany, pronouns of they, them, who's a theist who wants to explain why their religion is much better than others. So, Leonard, go ahead and give us a brief synopsis.
Hello.
Yeah, we hear you.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening.
Hello.
I like your
Hello.
beard.
Hang on. You got to let me finish the sentence. There's going to be a delay. We'll try to make judicious use of mute if we need to. But I'd like for you to give us a quick synopsis of what your religion is and why you think it's better. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm a Buddhist, and so I'm a Buddhist, and I read a lot of Buddhist literature, and the predictions made in there, I'm not examining, but just the predictions stated in there. These are mostly things that scientific facts, and so I thought, hey, if Buddhism believes in science basically, like in the Pali Canon, it talks about evolution. So I thought, let's deep dive into that, and now by abiding to Buddhism has helped me in my personal life.
Okay, so you're I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand here. So Buddhism has helped you with your personal journey? That's what you're saying? Okay.
And beyond that, I also was previously a big transphobe, homophobe, such things, but the Buddha teachings really showed me that I shouldn't hate. I shouldn't be a racist, and so I thought that's why my religion is so much better than others.
Okay. Is the smartest village idiot smarter than all the others? Yes. Does that mean it's a good thing? No.
Yes.
So maybe your religion is better than the other ones. My only concern is it true?
Yes, it is true, because Buddha, in the Lotus Sutra, Buddha talks about how all plants digest
Did you say
water
the Kama Sutra?
differently, which is
I'm sorry.
which they do in the microscopic dimension.
Leonard, can you state all of that again? Mandisa and I are having difficulty understanding what you're saying. So hang on, stop. Let me finish my fucking question before you start trying to answer it. We'd like you, because we don't know what you were referencing. Was it did Mandisa thought you might have referenced the Kama Sutra? So just state again what it is. Holy fucking shit.
Oh, sorry.
Because I'd like to understand what it is that you're saying is true about Buddhism. So start over and let us know what you think is true and why. Oh my fucking God. Go ahead.
Okay. What is because it's basically everything, and first and foremost, in Lotus Sutra it talks about microscopic ways about how plants or individually in their own way digest water, and also the Four Noble Truths make promises.
Okay. My apologies, Leonard. We're going to move on because I don't think I'm getting an answer to my question, and I'm having difficulty understanding what you're saying, and that's entirely my fault.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible says to love thy neighbor, even with all of the other crazy shit that's in there. So,
yeah,
I mean, I'm trying to understand how Buddhism and how does it explain creation and such. So, yeah.
I'm generally I don't have a lot of problems with secular varieties of Buddhism, and things like here's some sayings and some notions of meditation and things like that.
Right. Right.
But Buddhism has a number of declarations that include a cycle of rebirth, which is not scientifically supported at all. And so the secular Buddhists tend to view it as a metaphor, not so much an actual thing.
Right.
Or they'll cite, the same sort of documentation that this guy tried to cite a week or so ago on supposed cases of reincarnation, but you can't actually demonstrate that. And then Buddhism also has this notion of karma, which is just obviously false. And so because it's obviously false, they have to extend karma into multiple lifetimes. Like, you didn't get what you deserve in this life, but you're going to get it, through reincarnation. So they had to come up with a post hoc rationalization to explain why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. And it's because they did something in their other life to deserve this. That's my biggest problem with Buddhism, is the notion that if something goes wrong in your life, it's because you fucking deserved it, either in this life or a previous life. That is a vile assertion to make. And you're not even able to back it up with evidence.
And it isn't much different than Christianity. It isn't much different than Christianity, because basically everything good is attributed to God and everything bad is your fault, even though God created you. So it's like, how's that different?
It's wild to have that be the case. All right. We have, hang on, we'll do that. Matt in Alaska. It's Alaska, right?
Hello,
Pronouns are he, him?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Matt.
Hello, Miss Thomas and Mr. Dillahunty. First off, sorry if I'm kind of sorry. This is the first time doing this, so I'm kind of nervous.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Real quick question, as this predicates upon the rest of the question. Mr. Dillahunty, is there any verse or passage?
Matt is fine and preferred.
Matt, sorry.
Thanks.
How I was raised, used last time. Anyway, sorry. The question is there any passage or verse that you're aware of that says that God marries the Virgin Mary?
No.
Okay. The reason I ask this is because if that's the case, this would mean that Jesus was born out of wedlock. He would be considered a bastard, correct?
Well, as God within Christendom is the ultimate arbiter of sanctioning unions, it's just a de facto presumption that God sanctioned this union.
Okay. Damn, that kind of puts a hole in the whole thing then. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that says, oh, they got married. But if the case is Jesus is a bastard and therefore no bastard can enter heaven,
exactly.
It's beyond silly to think that if you begin with the model and you assume that these things happened, it's beyond silly to think the all-knowing, all-powerful God of the universe would intentionally give birth to a bastard that can't enter heaven, and instead would just say, when we say bastard, we're saying someone born of a union not sanctioned by God. So
I get that
by default.
Yeah. The reason I was asking is because there's a lot of contradictions in the Bible. There's a lot of stuff where God does something that makes no sense. So my thinking was, he wasn't thinking when he did this, so he screwed himself.
You think God, despite being viewed as infinitely wiser than all humans, is just a clumsy thinker? I would agree that the Bible character of God is definitely a clumsy thinker, as is Jesus. But if you begin with the assumption that this God can impregnate someone and is the creator and sustainer of everything in the universe, I don't think God just overlooked his previous rule about a bastard.
That's a fair point.
It could also be the case It could also be the
Sorry, please
case
go ahead.
that the passage in Deuteronomy is simply wrong.
Okay. Would that also then mean that the other, like, 600 plus commandments can also be wrong, right?
Sure. Any of
Okay.
this could in fact be wrong, which is the problem. You have no way of determining what's a scribal error versus what's something that somebody added in there. But depending on which version of, so it's Deuteronomy 23:2. And
yes, sir. And the version I'm looking at was the King James version, if that matters.
Sure, yeah, the King James version. I mean, but the Hebrew word is mamzar, and it means it comes from a root that means alienate and mongrel. We write that as bastard, but if you look at like other versions of the Bible, like the English Standard Version, that verse says, "No one born of a forbidden union may enter into the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants." If you look at in English Revised Version, it's, "If a man's parents were not legally married, that man may not join the men of Israel." And so now you're into another potential category change, which is, was Jesus a man, and did the man enter heaven? Because there's this notion that Jesus was fully man and fully God, and so that it's the fully God part that goes to heaven.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because a little bit of context, I was debating this stuff and morality and whatnot with my theistic friends, and I'm an atheist, so they got a little heated, but it just brought up how all this came about when I noticed, like, wait, hang on, he didn't marry her, so this must mean that, and it just went down a trail. Sorry.
Yeah, so there's lots of things that you can say. And some of them are going to really, really, really piss off theists.
Yeah.
The ones that by default have that effect, I don't know that they're very useful. And one of my favorite examples, which you probably, I'm going to bet, I won't say I've never used this, but I've probably never really used this before. So if you go to Mark chapter 14, verses 51 and 52, what it says there is, this is Jesus essentially in the Garden of Gethsemane. And so verse 51 says, "One of those following Jesus was a young man wearing only a linen cloth. When the people tried to grab him, he left the cloth in their hands and ran away naked." There are people who will basically say Jesus was caught in the woods with a mostly naked boy. And because the specific wording there is, a young man, the question then becomes, ooh, how young are we talking? And why was he only wearing a linen cloth? And, when they tried to grab him, he left it and he fled off naked. It sounds very salacious. I find it almost ridiculous to think that that was in any way intended to be viewed as salacious. It makes no sense for them to essentially say, yeah, Jesus was out in the woods with a half naked boy when they caught up with him. And to frame it that way is going to irritate theists and won't make any headway in any sort of reasonable argument. You'd be much better served going to the Bible referring to the disciple whom Jesus loved and various other things like that if you're going to try to say, Jesus was gay or bi or whatever else.
Before.
Well, okay, read your Bible more.
Disciple who Jesus loved. I am going to check that one out right now, but okay.
I also don't necessarily recommend using that one either, but at least it's better than saying he was with a half naked boy in the woods.
Fair point. Yeah, all right, thank you. Again, just wanted to see what you guys thought to make sure I wasn't messing up somewhere, but fair enough.
No worries. Thanks, Matt. There's plenty of ways to be dishonest about stuff. Arden and I actually watched my family home movies, which I need to reach out to my brother because I think I'm missing a chunk of them. I think I only have one of 2 DVDs. Because because we didn't even see like the Disneyland trip and stuff, which my memory is that there's home movies of this, but maybe not. But the number of home movies that have me and my brother naked in a bathtub, or running around the house, in just underwear, putting on cowboy boots and all that. It's staggering. I don't understand what parents' obsessions are with filming their kids naked.
And taking pictures. So many of us have, naked pictures of ourselves. And I am guilty of, of having those type of pictures of my daughter. But now I wouldn't dream of doing it. If we could go back, sometimes they may seem like it's cute, but it's like, now it's like, oh gosh, what were we thinking? And it probably wasn't to be in any way, we thought it was cute, and it wasn't in any way intentionally bad, but it's like, yikes. We look at it now, it's like, oh my gosh, like, why did we do that? But knowing what we know now, is like, who?
I got another caller here. Mary in Florida, pronouns she, her, has a question for Mandisa, so I will let my guest take charge. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Matt Mandisa. I'm so glad to see you on, Mandisa. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yay.
I don't know if you can answer this or not, but it seems that a lot of Black voters are going to vote for Trump. And I don't get it, because his racism has been demonstrated repeatedly. And even with his sneakers, Blacks love sneakers. And when he spoke at the Black conservative convention or whatever, he was so insulting, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, hon. Why do they be flipping to him?
So I'm going to say that this is just my perspective only. I can't speak for all Black folks, because we're not a monolith. Yeah, we're not the Black community is not a monolith. And so just as there are actually a majority of the Black community votes Democrat, which hasn't always shown to be in many Blacks' best interests either. So part of that is a disenchantment with the political system and what many politicians they promise that they don't deliver. There are, like most politicians, Trump panders, and there are a lot of these Black conservatives are They are conservative Christians, and they believe hook, line, and sinker. Like, who is that guy out of South Carolina, Tim Scott, and even the lieutenant governor out of North Carolina, who is very, very misogynistic. He says that he wishes that we could go back to the time that women weren't allowed to vote. So there are a lot of Black folks who think they're doing what's in the best interest of their demographic and who they are listening to based on their Christian family values. And this is much of it is a result of the institutional indoctrination of religion and also racism, which religion is, has been a catalyst for. So a lot of that has to do with a lot of conditioning. But again, also too, there was a time where the Democratic Party was like the Republican Party. Granted, it's good to know the history of where that changed. But, unfortunately, Trump, and like I said, I'm speaking as an individual, Trump in basically, yes, a lot of what his rhetoric is definitely racist. And you would think, like any thinking person or any person who is on the outside of this would think, what the hell? Like, why in the world would anybody be okay with him saying that? But unfortunately, you have a lot of people who he resonates with, and this includes some Black folks who, again, who align very Republican and conservative. And a lot of that has to do with some of their Christian values that they hold, and these conservative and very misogynistic and patriarchal values that they hold. And they don't think they're saying or doing anything wrong. They really think that they are, they really think that they are doing what's in the best interest for the quote unquote family. And even though the conditions in Black communities and among Black people definitely show otherwise. But you definitely have a group of, you have Black folks who are conservative. A lot of the stuff that they say is very, very anti community based. It is it seems to be pandering to what they would like to aspire to. And it's very unfortunate in a lot of ways that they say these things. It's like they're spewing rhetoric, but unfortunately, just like I can't speak for the entire Black community, because unfortunately, some of that stuff it resonates with some of them. So it's, again, it is unfortunate, but people are going to be people at times, even though, we can definitely ask the question of why. But I have never been so, I've always known that there's always been dissent within Black communities. There have always been disagreements. There have always been political differences, ideological differences, and it's sad that many of them don't realize that they are being used. They really are. But at the same time, it's the truth at times can be stranger than fiction. And so to answer that, I can only give my speculation based and my response based on history, based on what we're seeing currently, in the public, in the political eyes. But this is it, unfortunately. Like I said, we've never been a monolithic community. We probably never will be. However, taking into consideration the historical factors, the institutional factors, it is very disappointing that many of them would take this stance because it's like they don't see it. But Matt, do you have any? If you want to add something to that, then that's perfectly fine. But I'm not sure if you looked up and I think his last name is Robinson. I think it's Mark Robinson out of North Carolina, the lieutenant governor. But yes, you have some of these Black men in power and some of these Black folks in power who spew the very racist rhetoric and very anti-community rhetoric that we suffer from. And it is very mind-boggling, but it's a reality.
Yeah, I wonder, not so much. I get it. It frustrates me to see that a significant portion of the Black community is likely to be Trump supporters, and the same thing for the Hispanic community. While he's let's close the border and let's absolutely talk mad shit about anybody who's brown, and yet they'll just keep on supporting. And there are lots of different reasons. There are reasons that people connect with one group over another. Some of them are honest mistakes and misunderstandings. And like right now, I've been collecting data because I'm going to do a show prior to the election of not just why I'm not voting for Trump, but I am in fact voting for Biden. And that while Biden is far from perfect, there's any number of really good things. And so this isn't, you can view it as the lesser of two evils, but the lesser of two evils is still the better option every single time. And since we know one of these two is going to end up as president, I'll go for the better option. But when you look at polls, fully 49% of people thought that we were at a 30-year high for unemployment when we are in fact at a 30-year low. 49% of people polled thought the S&P 500 was at an all-time low when it was at an all-time high. This is not trivial. Fully half of the population, or nearly half of the population, isn't just wrong. Their view of reality is the exact opposite of what we know the facts to be. I mean, this isn't debatable. It's not disputable. It's just, here's the freaking statistics. But if they're getting their news and information from sources that aren't going to reference the actual statistics and facts, then they're going to be misinformed. But a lot of people don't even do that. They just go by how it feels. And so when we talk about the economy, the mortgage rate right now, which I think is around 7% or more, whereas in it's been down at 3% at other times. And so let me just look up mortgage rate right now. 5 best mortgage rates: 7.6, 6.8, 7.8. That's 30-year fixed, 15-year fixed, and 10-6 ARM. Mortgage rates are a problem, but they're not the only facet of the economy. And so when you look at, for example, gasoline prices, they're actually pretty decent. When you start looking at statistics on what people earn and where wealth is starting to shift to, all of those are better. The younger individuals are increasing their wealth. Whether or not some things are outpacing inflation, we have a generally good economy with some problems that Biden has presided over. I think the 4 top years on a number of different criteria. I'm not saying that it's great. I'll have all the statistics. I'll put it all together. But we live in a world where not only do half the people not think that's the case, but they think the opposite's the case. And so they're like, well, if the economy's so good, why did I just lose my job? And so it's true. There are unemployment's at a record low, or near record low, but that doesn't change the fact that somebody lost their job today. Tons of people lost their job today. And for them, their personal sample size of their life, the economy sucks. And it's very difficult to say, hey, I know you're struggling, but generally we're doing good. Generally it's fine. And as long as you live in a world where that's happening, how do you overcome that? If somebody says we have a record unemployment, and we don't, we actually have great, lowest unemployment in the 30 years or something like that. Don't quote me because I'll get the statistics for that show. But if they're not willing to look at the data and they say, you're trusting the media, you're trusting the government, which is lying to you, you're trusting this, you are part of this. The MAGA folks are in a cult that is actively denying the facts of reality. And it's not just the hardcore MAGA folks that are in that cult. Their misinformation and disinformation is spreading to the politically apathetic, those people who don't pay any attention to what the actual numbers are, those people who aren't, somebody's like, oh, Biden is a far-right hack who's presiding over a genocide. Now, I got loads of problems with what the administration has done with regard to Gaza and Palestine, Palestinians, and Netanyahu, and I'm in favor of them bringing him up on trial for potential war crimes. I'll let the courts do that. I don't spend a lot of time digging in on it here because, first of all, I think there's too many people oversimplifying the issue. But if you say Biden's a far-right hack, you're an idiot that I don't need to talk to. I'm not talking to you, Mary. Obviously, this is somebody who emailed me. But if you say Biden's a far-right hack, you're an idiot that I don't need to talk to. If you say Biden's policies with regard to Gaza and Palestine are problematic, I agree with you. And I think that Biden is starting to agree and starting to change some of this. Now, maybe you can say, oh, it's too little too late, and he's doing it for election purposes, and the protests have worked. And maybe the protests have, but that's the way things go. And generally speaking, you support allies until they cross a line. I think Netanyahu's absolutely crossed a line. Israel still has every right to defend itself, but it doesn't have a right to commit war crimes and do some of the stuff that it's doing. And our support for Israel, I've never supported de facto support of Israel. Israel can get fucked. I mean, I don't care. It's the theistic Christian model that is like, ooh, the end times are coming and we have to side with Israel. That's nonsense. I will side with any nation that is actually, good and advocating for, individual freedom and stuff like that. Not just slaughtering people because they're part of a group that did something wrong. There's a lot of problems here. And yet we in the United States seem to be evenly divided or nearly evenly divided on so many things. So many. And some of them are just, you're factually wrong. If you think the S&P was at a historic low when it's at a historic high, you are just factually wrong. And I don't know how to fix that. And I don't think it's a black-white thing. I don't think it's a Hispanic black-white thing. I don't think anything like that. I think that there are pockets of our communities that have been disenfranchised and lied to and disregarded. And why the fuck should I pay attention to what these hot shots are doing or what the truth is? I'm going to vote based on my bank account and my pocketbook, irrespective of what's going on across the country. And when you have groups that have been traditionally impoverished, maligned, sidelined, they're the ones who are going to feel it the most in their pocketbook. And so their perception of the economy is going to be negative even when it's positive. And the only thing Republicans have done for the economy is to keep giving tax breaks to the incredibly wealthy.
Well, I don't understand how, like, when Trump spoke at the Black conservative meeting, which when they showed the crowd, it was high majority white people. He seems so insulting to them, and they don't hear it.
Well, clearly they were not. I mean, like you said, if it's a majority white audience or non-black audience, and those people in the room probably didn't. It's possible that they didn't even think that he was talking to them because they align with those conservative values. Of course, we can see that as, sorry. We can say he's talking about you and to you as well. But of course, they don't see that. But go ahead, Matt.
A lot of them will put themselves in a mentality where, oh, he's not talking to me. He's talking to those other black folks. He's not. And we did this. We've seen this over and over again. We see this with the Hispanic community that are citing on immigration issues and everybody coming in. It's like, hey, me and my family got in. We're in here. We're doing stuff right. So, screw those other people. It's the mentality of, we sold Americans the idea that we could all become billionaires anytime. The American dream, someday I might be filthy rich, and boy, it'd be nice if I could keep most of that money and not have to give it away to all those other people. And so I'm going to support tax cuts on the rich because I'm convinced I'm going to be one. You know why? It's because I'm not like those other people in my group, and I'm desperate to prove it to you. I'm not like, whatever characteristic they want to stereotype the Black community with, the Hispanic community with, the Asian community with. There's an incentive for people in those communities to say, ooh, I'm not part of that stereotype portion of our group. I'm part of this portion of the group. I'm not one of the bad, I'm not one of the welfare people. I'm an actual worker. I'm not one of this group of people. I'm an actual, I'm contributing. And so in their head, it's really easy to say, I need to make sure that guy who's incredibly powerful and is going to be making decisions, I want to make sure he knows I support him because that makes me different from the people that he's talking shit about.
Yeah, it's mind blowing because people I interact with
There's a word we use for people like that, but I'm not going to say that on the air.
And I wasn't going to say it ever.
No, I mean it's not even the N word. It's a C word, Matt. But yeah. I'll just say that so many of the things that we're not like those Negroes. I mean, there are. It's sad that we do see that within Black communities as well, just like we see it in different communities, like you said, you see it in the white community. There are white folks who look down on rich white folks look down on poor white folks. Trump has screwed over just as many white people as he has done anybody else. And I think it's important for people to understand that. He is equal opportunity as to who he will screw over.
Yep.
Yes.
By the way, I typed something in the VMix chat for you. Mary, I got to move on. We got a couple other callers I want to get to. I don't think we're going to figure out anything more other than we've got to just keep trying to educate people and keep getting people to care about the truth more than comfort. And I think that, the long-winded description I just gave is basically about people seeking comfort and prioritizing comfort over truth and equality and reality. But
yeah.
Okay.
And folks in the Black community are not exempt from that. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Mary.
And women's rights. But thank you.
Correct.
Love the show. Thanks for having Mandisa on, Matt.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Mary.
And by the way, it's we talked about this with regard to the Black community, the Asian community, Hispanic community, et cetera. You can do the same thing with women. There's a meme. There's a meme that I absolutely hate, and I call it out all the time. And every time I do, somebody says, "Oh, you're mansplaining. You're mansplaining." No, I'm fucking not. You're posting something that's absolutely boneheaded, stupid, and it's coming from a sincere place, which is, men shouldn't have any say over, my womb or anything else. Men shouldn't be making laws that govern my womb. Well, my womb. Well, first of all, good luck. But would you rather that the person making laws about your reproductive rights was me, a man, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, or Lauren Boebert, or the countless other Republican women who side in opposition to abortion? When you break it down by gender and suggest that you'd be better off if women were making the decisions, you are factually wrong. Women in favor of women's reproductive rights is still not necessarily a majority, even amongst women, because they've been lied to and conned by religious sentiments and stuff. And whereas we used to see, there's a great video I watched today. I should promote her if I can remember. I'll look it up and get it to y'all later. But it was about changes in church-state separation. And when she was going through the history, she was talking about how nobody cared about abortion until we made their racism less palatable. As long as they could drive a divisive wedge based on race notions, they didn't need to care about abortion or anything else. And as soon as we reached a point where now all of a sudden it's you start tossing around racial epithets and talking about those people in that way, all of a sudden you get side-eyed from people who look like you, which you didn't do before. And so they needed a new wedge issue to divide people, because we started making progress on civil rights issues and equality. We're light years away from actually having anything that's like true equality, but we're way closer than we were before I was born. And so they shifted that to use abortion as a wedge issue. That demonstrates their dishonesty on this. But
I definitely would agree with that. And that goes back to what I said about the Black community not being a monolith, and that there are Black folks who are only looking out for their own interests rather than looking at the historical factors and the institutional factors. They could give a shit about that. Yeah. So, I definitely would agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Coat Hanger and Chad Legia Mills. Thank you so much. Yeah, I watched it today. I have difficulty remembering her name. She's phenomenal. She's a lawyer, does a lot of legal analysis stuff, but she did one on the erosion of church-state separation that I thought was just outstanding. But All right, we have 3 callers left. Caller number 1 here is Alexander, who's a theist from Texas, pronouns are he, him, who says the evidence for the supernatural is overwhelming. Alexander,
okay.
Like,
hello,
welcome, I guess.
Hello.
My take on this is a little different in that there are plenty of claims that people make where they say something unusual has happened and I think it's supernatural. How do you tell the difference between something that is in fact supernatural in origin and something that is not supernatural in origin but is perceived that way?
Well, I guess some of the clear, no doubt things that you would see would be that you wouldn't have a shadow of a doubt in believing it would be where people would be levitating, crawling up the wall like a spider, which many of these Catholic exorcists have again and again have
where's
mentioned.
So first of all, in like, for example, a Catholic exorcism, I'm not aware that I've seen evidence of actual levitating, but even if all of us witnessed what appeared to be a levitation, how would we confirm that the cause of that is supernatural at all?
Well, you would have to imply all materialistic procedurements to test that out, right? Anything.
Well, what I'm saying
everything.
is, as far as I can tell, in the history of the world, there's not been a single confirmed, there's been no demonstration that anything supernatural is possible as a cause for an observed phenomenon or has been confirmed as a cause. And so if you witnessed levitation, what would be the test that you do to show that it's supernatural in origin?
Well, I think I answered that in my statement before that.
So when I clarify that you didn't in fact give a satisfactory answer, and I give you another opportunity to answer it, you're just not going to try? You're just going to say you already answered that?
Okay, well, you justify by testing, right? If it's either supernatural or not.
Okay.
Where
Alexander, the problem is, I'm asking, how do you test whether it's supernatural or not?
You test by, okay. So in other words, right, you're like, how do you know if it's supernatural, or how can you know if it's supernatural, right?
So I'm a magician.
Yeah.
I'm a magician.
Mm-hmm.
I can do some things that some people would look at and say, oh, that's supernatural. They're not, but some people might think that. Similarly, let's say we had an observed phenomenon, like you and I stood in that room and we watched somebody levitate. My answer looking at it would be, I don't know what caused that. And if you're saying that is supernatural in origin, I want to know what test you did or could do to confirm that it was supernatural in origin.
Well, I think that's a contradiction, because isn't it possible to do tests on the supernatural, since the supernatural is away from the material to do tests on?
So you just
you're
asserted
the one making the claim. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
You just asserted that my question is contradictory, which is absolutely absurd.
I understand that. I understand
No,
that.
stop interrupting me while stop interrupting me. This is not going to go well for you, Alexander, if you keep interrupting me. You just asserted that I contradicted myself or stated something that was contradictory. And then you went on to say that the supernatural can't be tested, which means that you're the one in a contradictory position, because you're suggesting that you would determine that something is caused by the supernatural by testing. Mm-hmm. And then you just asserted that you can't test for the supernatural. So which is it?
Okay, well, I think we can both agree on, right, that on, like you said as an analogy, right, the magicians, right, how can you test the magician, if a magician did a real thing or not? I think that we can test on the magician's part. We can actually test, right, if it's real or not. But if you can imply a test, like the magicians, on a supernatural thing that you cannot have an answer for, but it's still happening.
No. So first of all, you don't get to call it a supernatural thing. That's the thing you're trying to prove. So there's some event, and it either had a supernatural explanation or cause, or it did not. You don't get to call it a supernatural event until you confirm the cause. What is the test that you do on the levitating person to show that it's supernatural in origin?
I'm gonna be honest here, Matt. You can't do no test.
Okay. So by your own admission, there cannot possibly be confirmed evidence of the supernatural. Thank you for calling.
Okay, but hang on.
Why would Alexander, I'll hang on. But first I'd like you to answer, why should I hang on? Because you called in to say the evidence for the supernatural is overwhelming. And now you're saying you can't test for the supernatural, which means not only is the evidence not overwhelming, it's non-existent. So why should I continue to discuss this with you?
Okay. And I really, really respectfully would like to ask you this, right? If in fact you would like to add, if you would like for me to provide I don't know about like what kind of test, like empirical test. Give me, what do you mean?
I asked you, and you just told me that it can't be tested. So why would I then give you criteria to test what you just told me can't be tested? Meanwhile, the question I asked was, why should I continue to discuss this with you when your case has just been defeated?
Okay, well, I believe that a very, very piece.
What you believe is irrelevant. I'd like you to answer my question. Why should I continue to discuss this with you when the case you made has just been defeated?
How has it been defeated?
You asserted.
You just said that there is no way to test it. There is no way. You defeated your own argument, sir.
Yeah.
There is a way that you can test it, but not on the test of materialism.
You just said that there wasn't a way to test it, and now you're saying there is. Why on earth should I continue a conversation with someone who repeatedly contradicts themselves?
You can let me just rewrap, let me reframe, let me actually give you a test that I think it's reasonable to include to verify if it's supernatural or not, okay?
Give me a test.
If I can put every single test that I can make, right, in a materialistic way around the case of scenario of that would happen, and if the person still levitates and crawls up the wall and speaks in Latin where they have no previous historical knowledge of perfect Latin or ancient Koine Greek, and speaks names thereof that has no relative information between people and references and whatever, and they're still able to do that, I believe that is a very strong indication that is a supernatural, because you have person information.
What would that test be? You're saying that there's overwhelming evidence. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, man.
Right.
All you did was just say, if you can do every test for a material cause and they fail to show a material cause for someone levitating, walking up the wall, speaking Latin, and saying names that I don't think they could have known, then if the tests that you do fail, it's reasonable to conclude that it's supernatural. No, sir, that's a fallacy. You are wrong.
Okay. Could I respectfully ask you, right, in a free thinking and in a discussion, right, sense, could you provide a sort of advice or not advice, example for me to say, like, what would you expect, or what would you include? What would
No, Alexander, here's the problem. This is what I'm trying. Stop fucking talking. Stop talking and listen. Stop fucking talking and listen, and you'll learn.
Matt Dillahunty versus Jay Dyer transcendental argument absolutely gets blown out of the water.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, you disgusting little prick, and then I'm going to school you and make you my bitch. Okay? So listen up, Alexander, my cute little bitch. Here's the problem with assertions about the supernatural. By your own admission and acknowledgement, the one thing that you got right is that we don't know of any way to test that something is supernatural in origin. As Arthur C. Clarke pointed out, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Basically, there reaches a point where our knowledge level is not sufficient to say X is supernatural. The fallacy that you tried to use of saying, oh, if we observed something and we tested it and we could not come up with a material definition or a material explanation, then it would be reasonable for us to conclude that the explanation is supernatural. That is a fallacy. You do not get to conclude that something is supernatural just because you have failed to come up with a natural explanation, because you don't know everything about natural explanations and potential natural explanations. So when you want me to try to give you an example of what would prove it to me, you are shifting the burden of proof, and you are misunderstanding the entirety of how to make a case for something. I don't know how you would prove the supernatural. I'm not convinced that it's possible to prove the supernatural, but that's not my problem, and it's not a problem with my epistemology. It's a problem for you because you think there is something supernatural. You think you can reasonably conclude there's something natural, and yet when presented with multiple opportunities to actually do that, you absolutely failed, admitted you couldn't, then tried to backpedal to suggest that maybe you can, then tried to pretend that it was somehow my problem for not giving you the test criteria for the bullshit you're spewing. Instead, Alexander, it would be better for you to say, I witnessed someone levitating, climbing up a wall, speaking in Latin that I don't think they knew before, and mentioning names that I don't think I knew before, and I don't know how that happened. I would at least agree with you. I don't know how it happened either. But you know what's even worse than that? I don't know that it did happen. I've seen no example and no evidence that confirms someone levitating, walking up a wall. Yet I've seen videos. I've seen the Exorcist movie. I've seen fraudulent things. I've seen things that we can't confirm even happened. And you seem to take testimonial accounts of someone witnessing an exorcism and reporting on it. And you not only assume that they are accurately reporting what they saw, but that they are accurately reporting the cause for what they saw. I don't accept either. And that's not a problem with my position. It's a problem with yours. If you want to say that something happened, you have to be able to demonstrate it. And if you can't come up with it, and you sit here and contradict yourself repeatedly, then maybe what you should do is reach out to God and ask God what you should say next. Because right now you are an embarrassingly bad representative of God and of epistemology on confirming the supernatural. Would you like to try and actually have a reasonable discussion? Or you just want to show that you are another Jay Dyer stooge to come in and pretend that there's some evidence that supports the supernatural and then have to acknowledge that there's not? Which is it?
All right. Well, first of all, let me just come in straight and let me prove to you how God is on my side, because I have no experience to debates and whatever. But I do believe that I just caught on you making a absolute fallacy on the sense that you said, how about you try to call your God for trying not to make yourself embarrassment? I believe that has been on every single person, right, that has a absolute good argument, solid argument, and people would still be like, oh, why didn't you call on your God and, not make yourself an embarrassment? So thank you for just self-refuting yourself on your channel, Matt. Anyway.
I didn't refute myself at all, Alexander, but I'm going to put you on mute so that I can address this again. You just accused me of making a fallacy. Please identify what I said that was fallacious and what fallacy it is. If you can identify what I said that was fallacious and what the fallacy is, I'll give you $100 right now.
All right. Well, I better expect those $100 because if you make a statement and you make a statement.
What's the statement? What was the statement and what was the fallacy? That's it. That's the only thing before you. The only sentences that need to come out of your mouth is what statement did I make and what was the fallacy? And if you can do that, you get $100.
Okay. You said, I'd advise for you to call on your God so that you cannot make yourself a fool, so that you can know what to say, for him to tell you what to say, so that you won't make yourself a fool. Okay?
Yes. What's the fallacy?
The fallacy is that you just made a truth claim about something that has literally been said or by Christians, right, that have an absolute good argument, right, on the good line, and people will still say it's a bad argument. And the same thing that you have said.
What's the fallacy? Because first of all, what I did say wasn't an argument, which means it can't be fallacious. The second thing is that what you're asserting is that I made a truth claim, which isn't true, and you have not identified the fallacy. You are in over your head, bitch. You are not ready for this. The point that I was making is that if in fact your God exists and wants you to interact with me, then that God should tell you, could tell you, not necessarily should, but could tell you exactly what you need to say so that you are not contradicting yourself repeatedly. Sorry, what?
Right. And I'm sorry, and Alex, you should not be asking Matt that. The point is that if you have all of this evidence for the supernatural existing, you wouldn't have to ask Matt these questions.
Yeah. Fallacies apply to arguments, not my suggestion that you should ask God. But the problem is that in no way was I making an argument that said, you need to ask your God this, or blah, 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 therefore, blah, blah, blah. There wasn't an argument made, which means there isn't a fallacy made. But also, you just came back with the assertion that Christians presented good arguments and could be dismissed that way. Well, yes, that could be the case. But here's what can't happen. And so I'll ask you a couple simple questions. Does the God you believe in know everything that's ever happened and ever will happen?
Yes.
Okay. Does the God you believe in want me to believe in him?
Yes.
Does the God that you believe in want you to try to convince me that he exists?
Yes.
Does the God that you believe in communicate with you in a way that you can understand?
Yes.
Did you ask God what you should say before you called in?
No.
Why not?
I believe you're making questions that are...
Alexander,
okay, first of all,
why didn't you ask God what you should say before you called in?
Because it was out of my own will and my own rational thinking of desire to call you about.
But you think God wants you to convince me that he's real. So why wouldn't you ask? Why don't you go ask God what you should say next time, and then we can even schedule it. Like you could apply to be on End Boss, and you could go off and pray and ask God what you should say. And does your God know exactly what would change my mind?
Matt, can you promise not to?
Does your God know exactly what would change my mind?
Yes, but he has a will not to tell me. I mean,
no, Alexander, you don't get to make shit up. I'm asking very simple questions. So your God knows exactly what would change my mind. You believe your God knows exactly what would change my mind. You believe your God wants you to change my mind. And instead of asking God what you should say to change my mind, you just decide to go it on your own, despite the fact that you are completely unequipped for this conversation. That seems not very bright. So why don't you go ask God what you should say?
I don't think it's right for you to...
I'm sorry, but I was still talking, so I'm going to mute you again. I'm going to let you go here in a minute. And you should go ask your God what you should say next time. And then you can call me back and say, God told me to say this. And then we'll be able to find out whether or not your God was right about what would change my mind, right?
Matt, Jesus incarnate could not even...
That was a question. That was a question, right?
Yes, but it's more of the heart issue, Matt.
It's no, sir. I'm sorry, but Alexander, you might just be a little too dumb for this. But if your God knows exactly what would change my mind, and you ask God, what should you say? Then the heart thing is irrelevant because your God will tell you exactly what you should say to change my mind, right?
You mean how Jay Dyer was more bright than you that you couldn't understand?
Oh, you know what? Why don't you go cup to Jay just a little bit more, since you've demonstrated that you can't. Then you can't have it. You can't have an argument. You don't understand fallacies. You don't know what you're doing, and you are now dishonest because you think you know better about how to interact with me than your God does. I'm an ignorant fool, really? I'm an ignorant
Yeah,
fool?
you said that. You said that on his video. He absolutely destroyed you.
Cool.
What?
And what does
What
that
does
make
that have to do with
you?
this
What does that make
conversation
you,
now?
Alexander?
Jeez.
What does it make you when I've given you every opportunity to even go take time off and ask your God a question? The truth is, you're a liar.
Because if you
You
can't
know
do
that
that on Jay Dyer's
you're
video,
God. I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you, and I'm never going to unmute you. You're just going to sit there and listen to me until I hang up on you and go to another caller, because you're a liar, Alexander. If in fact you believed that there was a God who could and would tell you exactly what you should say to change my mind, you would ask that God. Otherwise, you are putting yourself ahead of God. You are putting your own will and your desire ahead of God, which is what you did when you called in today and made an embarrassing representation. You are one of the worst representatives of the God that you believe in that I've ever interacted with, because given multiple opportunities to make a case, all you did was repeatedly contradict yourself and show that you like to suck up to Jay Dyer. Well, congratulations. You guys can blow each other all you want. I'm still sitting here saying there is no evidence for the supernatural, and you agreed. I'm saying I'm not aware of any test that could demonstrate that the supernatural exists, and you agreed. What's more is you went a step further and said there cannot be a test for the supernatural, and then you tried to contradict yourself later. You are in way over your head, and I bid you good evening. Tell Jay, if you can talk around his cock, I said hi. All right.
Matt, do these people just like, do they just set them? I mean, my goodness, they must be masochists. I think they are.
It is, there's some genuine confusion there. Alexander has bought into the notion that many other people have, which is, hey, it didn't just intuitively, like if I told you, Mandisa, last night, you wouldn't believe it. This person started levitating above the bed. I'm a magician. I know how these things can be done. And I looked, and there weren't any wires. There was nothing here. They were just chanting and flopping. They crawled up the walls. They moved along the ceiling. They started saying all kinds of stuff. Everybody would be leaning towards, wow, that's not natural.
Right.
And the difference between saying, wow, that's not natural, and saying, yes, it is in fact supernatural, is all about evidence. So first of all, show me the case where that's happening. And then I will look at it and say, I don't know what the explanation for that is. I'm not the one making a claim about the explanation. Alexander is. Alexander is saying that is in fact supernatural. There's sufficient evidence to conclude it's supernatural. And this is evidence for the God that I believe in. But Alexander also believes that God wants him to convince me, and that God knows how to convince me. But Alexander didn't bother to ask God how to convince me. If I had a friend, if I had a black friend who was stuck in a religion, and I was convinced that Mandisa knew exactly what I should say to that person to help them out of that religion.
Right.
There is not a force on this earth that could get me to not ask you what, if I was absolutely convinced, like Mandisa knows exactly what the fuck I should say, including Mandisa would tell me, keep your goddamn mouth shut and stay out of it, if that was the case. And so Alexander's either afraid that he's wrong about what God is, what God wants, what God knows, and he doesn't want to be exposed as foolish, or Alexander wouldn't get his 5 minutes of sucking Jay off on my show because God doesn't actually want him to. Now, I'm not the one sitting here contradicting myself. And by the way, Alexander, you wonderful little bitch, if you accuse me of fallacy and you don't identify the fallacy, you're done. Because I don't think you know or understand what fallacies are or what the significance is. So you trying to lecture on behalf of Jay and logic is embarrassingly bad when you accuse me of a fallacy and cannot identify it, not by name, nor by pointing to what was actually said that was fallacious. You are not ready.
And there you have it.
2 calls left. And Katy, who's in Louisiana, pronouns are she, her, is an ominist, which, okay. And you say you believe in the Greek pantheon?
Yes, sir. Well, more so, Omnism, I think I added an I on accident when panicking on spelling it, but Omnism basically finds truth in all religions, but I more so focus on the Norse and Greek pantheon in my personal practice.
Do you think those beings actually exist?
Me personally, I do. I speak with Lady Hecate with pendulum and stuff, but I know that's anecdotal evidence. So
you speak with Lady Hecate?
Yes, Hecate. She's a very ancient goddess. She has many different spellings and pronunciations. I'm sorry. What do y'all know her as? I can do whichever that.
I'm fine with Hecate. What does Hecate tell you, and how does she tell you?
Right.
Well, I more so talk to her when asking questions, because with pendulums, it's easier to get a yes or a no answer and not much more than that. But I ask the question.
How do you know that the pendulum? How do you know the pendulum is actually giving you information from Hecate and not just from your own psychology?
I honestly don't. I didn't come here to prove anything. I came here to bring the idea of Omnism because I didn't know if y'all had heard of it.
Yeah, but
I should have said that. I'm sorry.
I care about what people believe and why. And so if you're going to say that you have no way to demonstrate that what you believe is true, I don't know how that's any good for us at all. Like, I don't even know why you, like, why do you believe it? If you can't, if I believe something, I know how to demonstrate why I believe it. I don't understand people who say I believe something but can't demonstrate it.
Right, and I get that. I came to Omnism through a deconstruction process. I was raised Pentecostal Christian, and through researching different religions, I found that I couldn't 100% prove any false, but I also couldn't 100% prove any true. So, and religion, in my opinion, is falsifiable because it's man-made, and I acknowledge that. So I more so am trying to find the truth and be as best of a person as I can before I die.
Everything you
Katy,
just said is wrong up to that, but go ahead, Mandisa.
Yeah, but Katy, what is it about Norse mythology that appealed to you the most? Because, I mean, from what I understand, in order to enter Valhalla, you have to die a very violent death.
You have to die in battle.
Can you tell us what? Yeah, die in battle, and what is it about Norse mythology that makes it more plausible?
Honestly, my mother is Norse pagan, so that's what she focuses on mainly. So through being raised with her as well, I'm sorry, my dog is barking. I need to let her in, so that y'all might hear that. I'm so sorry, but through that, I found that I had a bit of a connection with those Norse deities, but through my own path, I found other connections, like with Lady Hecate and stuff like that. And I just try and learn about all the different religions and stuff like that,
so
to make my own beliefs further.
Part of the problem is that I thought you said that all religions are falsifiable because they're man-made.
Technically, yes. Through man.
So,
all. I meant. All. Oh, sorry.
I don't know how you can say they're falsifiable, but falsifiability isn't contingent on whether or not something's man-made. So everything about that sentence is just like wrong. Like, for example, how do you falsify Christianity?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that word. I meant that religion itself, in my opinion, is man-made, so it tends to fall into the imperfection that man has. So through that, that's what makes it not fully able to be proven.
So let me back up because
sense.
now it doesn't matter whether you said it was falsifiable. It's kind of strange. So if you're using a pendulum, because you can get yeses and nos, I'm assuming from directional swing versus round swinging, right?
Yes, sir.
Why haven't you put that to the test to see if the information you're getting is accurate?
I have.
And
I'll ask.
What's the accuracy rate?
In my own personal practice, the accuracy rate is actually really high.
Cool. How do you know that? What information have you gotten from Hecate that's useful? Because with the pendulum thing where you're just asking yes or no questions, you should still be able to get somewhere. So is Hecate able to see, like, can Hecate see my desk and what's on my desk right here?
Well, you would have to call her in and invite her in because I don't believe that gods are omniscient or anything like that. But if you were to invite her into your space, she would be able to.
Okay. So how do I invite Hecate into my space?
It would be either verbally or making some kind of offering to her or something like that to encourage her to try and visit you.
If I just say, Hecate, I invite you into my space, is that enough?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Hecate, I invite you into my space. Hecate, while you're in my space, please look down at my desk. I have one playing card sitting there on my desk. And I'm going to ask Katy to use her pendulum to ask you yes or no questions to determine what playing card is on my desk. Wouldn't that be a good test to determine your accuracy with your communication?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Why don't you do that? And I'll take a picture right now, which will be time-stamped on my phone. So there it is. I have a picture. Matter of fact, I'll take a picture also of the stream as it's going live. So now there's a picture on my phone, time-stamped with the card so that I can't change it. You go off and ask Hecate what that card was. And if it's right, we can continue.
I got my pendulum if you would rather do it here.
Well, it might take you a minute. Why don't I put you on hold, take the other caller, and come back and see if you've got the answer?
Okay.
Cool. Be right back. Awesome. We get to actually do a test of somebody's ability to communicate. So here we go. Ezekiel in Tokyo, thank you so much for waiting. You're on with Mandisa and me.
Hello.
Ezekiel, are you there? Oh, this is disappointing. So, last call, Ezekiel.
Well, that means that we can get back to Hecate quicker.
Could be.
Were you calling me?
Yeah, Ezekiel, you're live on the air with Mandisa and Matt.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I just had, I guess, 3 quick questions. My first one, each has a bit, I guess, 2 of them have a bit of a story. And so growing up when I was like around 8 or so, my family started taking Bible lessons. And it's really during those Bible lessons that I started to question the Bible. Like, for example, I remember giving, these weren't the terms they used then, but I was presented with the Kalam. And I remember saying, okay, well, what created God? Who created God? And they're like, oh, well, God is uncreated because he's God. And that was never satisfying for me. And I know, like, my siblings, they are more, I guess, still believers. And so my question is, like, we grew up in the same environment, but I clearly was more of a skeptic thinker. So I was wondering if you think that possibly skeptic or more reasonable thinking is some people take to it more naturally.
Yes. I'm not aware of any kind of category of thinking where someone isn't more sort of naturally inclined towards that, and not just as a matter of like, IQ or schooling, but for the same reason that like I like games and puzzles and always have. And because of games and puzzles, I score higher on IQ tests than perhaps I should. You can almost train for them because they're kind of puzzle. And I score better than some other people who I genuinely think are brilliant and smarter in a colloquial sense than I am. People have an aptitude for mathematics and mathematical thinking. Some people have aptitudes towards spatial awareness and things like that. So I think it's almost an obvious yes that somebody's going to be more naturally inclined towards skeptical thinking, critical thinking.
Okay. Yeah, kind of what you're saying with puzzles. For me, like I remember one of my first gifts when I was 5 was a puzzle. And looking back, my sisters weren't into puzzles, and I figure maybe that's like what leaned me more towards that logical, these pieces don't go together, these pieces do go together logically kind of thinking. And I was just wondering along that line. And so I guess the follow-up question is, again, really quick story. In like middle school, there was a girl that I liked, and I went to one of my sisters for advice, and her question was, what race is she? And she wasn't Black, white, Asian, or Latino. So I said, I don't know, right? And so my sister pointed to the Bible, and she's like, well, in the Bible, God doesn't want, races dating separately or across races. And I remember thinking, that's not in the Bible. And then I went and found some passage similar saying that in the Bible, and my response wasn't what I see with lots of theists calling, which is, trying to mold it so that it fits with their morality. My thinking was just, why would God say this? This makes no sense at all. That was my thinking. And now that same sister has children, and she's raising them, and now she's like, we're bringing back I'm teaching them about the Bible because, I remember when we read the Bible, that's when I really started to believe. And sort of link it to that first question, for me was when we started reading the Bible, that's when I started questioning. But she's teaching my nephews from the Bible, things from the Bible, and I'm seeing one of them sort of pick up on this. I know she's teaching them about this sort of like interracial not dating, because I remember we were like watching a movie and he pointed out an interracial couple and said something. And I know, Matt, you've touched on this question, a similar question a lot. Sort of how do I, as not a parent figure, try and take them away from those ideas, try to teach them critical thinking, teach them how to question the Bible without straight up saying, hey, how do I teach that, put that in my nephews? And I think especially for me, living abroad, it's even harder. So kind of any advice for how to sort of instill and move them away from where this questionable morality that I think they're being taught based on the Bible.
Yeah, Ezekiel, I have a couple of questions here. So I need to ask, I have a couple of questions about your family dynamic. Are you the only son? Are you the only boy out of your siblings?
Yes.
Okay. Was there, because, and I'm asking because this actually plays a lot into it. Are you the youngest, oldest, or what's your, you're the youngest, you're the youngest boy. And so your sister, you do understand that within Christianity, there is a different expectation for women and girls than it is for men.
So the one thing I do want to point out is that my family, even though they sort of are Christian, we were never church-going Christians. We were never like we were, I guess, non-denominational because we were like, we believed in the Bible, say your grace, say prayers, but we never. I don't remember any strong indoctrination. So
Okay.
I'm not sure how strong those gender rules from the Bible really permeated
Okay,
into my family
let's
dynamic.
take the Bible out of it then. May
Okay,
I? And
yeah.
and I am not a therapist or psychiatrist by any means, but I need to ask, what were your parents' dynamics? What was the
Single mother.
relationship like with your parents? Single mother.
Mhm.
So the dad was not, your father was not present in your lives at all, or a period of time?
Very minimally, briefly in spurts, but mostly uninvolved single mother. Yeah.
Do you find that your mother was stricter on your sisters than you?
My sisters believe so. Yeah, I have heard that a bit, but I think
Right.
Yeah.
So I said the reason why I bring this all up is because it isn't always about religion and religion necessarily defining that, but those societal and family dynamics do play a huge role in shaping our outlook. And sometimes when it comes to being the youngest in the family, that can, and I'm just speculating here, but that could play a huge role in the way you might have been able to process things a little differently than your sisters.
Yeah.
So
like,
I think that there should be, you might need to just at least
but
go.
I know. Sorry, I know some people say that even if you're grown with the same parents or in the same household, you never have the same parents because they each
Absolutely not. Right.
you're raised differently. Yeah.
Right. And part of that could be due to your own natural curiosity, which is, like Matt said, there are inclinations that individuals and children have. But then also too, yes, there are differences in the way parents treat certain children. And I think that we would be very dishonest if we didn't admit that. So even in a single parent household being raised by your mom, that did not exempt her from from indoctrinating with patriarchal norms, especially as it pertains to how women and girls are supposed to behave, especially according to the Bible. There is often an unfair expectation placed on girls than the sons at times. I can't say that that's always true, but that is the case, and I think we can go to certain parental dynamics here, and how people are, and how families are raised, and even from our own experiences, if you will. So I think that even being a bit more introspective about your own, like the dynamic in your family, may be worth looking into and worth analyzing, because it almost sounds like there is some sort of resentment against your sisters. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm hearing.
No,
I'm not saying
there isn't any resentment.
Okay, but I'm like, if you're hearing what I'm hearing, it's, I think it might be worth at least trying to at least dissect and try to understand better. And it's not going to happen in one night. It's not going to happen. It may not even happen on this call, right? Just thinking about the family dynamic here, and trying to better understand how your sisters may have had to hold on to it, especially coming from a single parent household where the father was absent. There is something to process there with the with the religion. And I'm sorry if I rambled, Matt.
I will say, Ezekiel, the only advice I wanted to give is instead of having a goal of like undermining.
Yeah, I don't want to undermine.
Wow.
I just want to. Sorry.
Instead of having a goal of what do I need to do to protect my nephews from misinformation, things like that. Just love them and be honest with them. Encourage discovery and questioning. And don't do anything that's going to put yourself at odds with their parents, because someday you're going to be Uncle Ezekiel that it's okay to go to. And you don't want that to be cut off by conflict with the parents. So just be the best person you can.
Yeah. Okay. I think, and this ties into my third question, which I think is directly to Mandisa.
Okay.
I think what makes sort of navigating it a little bit hard is I'm not necessarily, I know you guys don't like the term, but out as an atheist to my family. And so it's not even like I can have those direct conflicts with them regarding religion. But my last question was, if Mandisa, if you had any resources for Black non-believers that I could look into, follow, like forums and groups that I could join just to have a sort of community.
Absolutely. You can join Black Non-Believers. We are on Facebook. We have a closed Facebook group. I know you are overseas, but we connect with people across the globe. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have content there. We have a live stream show that we do every first and third Saturday. It's more informational, but you can certainly meet people there. We are all over social media. We are looking to see how we can, expand to different platforms. But definitely, if you are on Facebook, definitely join our Facebook group. It is a closed group where you will be asked questions, and you can tell them that you can tell us that you found us on this show, and you can talk to primarily Black non-believers, but we have folks from all over in that group. So you can absolutely tap into Black non-believers as a resource.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think over the last couple of years watching these shows with Matt, I've been more open to labeling my religious affiliation, I guess. Before it was just, I'm not sure I believe in the Bible, this and that. But now that I'm acknowledging what I do or don't believe, I think I want to find a community and other, resources to get better information. So I'll definitely look into that.
Good. And the reason why I mention all that is because religion tends to infringe on a lot that we don't think about. When we think about family dynamics, when we think about how we treat each other as human beings, even within our own families, these are things that we have to deconstruct from as well. And so it might be worth looking into, in addition to, like what Matt said, just being supportive for your nephew rather than just trying to just say, no, this is wrong. There are some very delicate lines there that go beyond the doctrine itself. Sometimes it's very hard to see how deep it goes and how it impacts our relationships with our loved ones and the people around us.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Ezekiel.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you.
All right. Are we ready? Let's bring Katy back in. Katy, welcome back.
Hello.
So
there.
what did we learn from Hecate about the card?
She told me it was a first of clubs. If I'm wrong, I'll humbly accept that.
A first of clubs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll go, I guess, ace of clubs, whatever. The actual card was a 10 of spades. I took that picture of it right there. It's there. So the question I have is, you said you had a high accuracy rate, and I'm wondering what accuracy rate do you think should make it, like, if we did this test 100 times, what percentage of getting it right would make it believable, and what percentage would make it unbelievable for you?
For me, I would say an accuracy rating of about 80 to 90% is something I would need. And if not, then I would consider that to not be accurate.
Well, if you think this is a fair test, I'm happy to set aside time to do it another 99 times if you want, just not during the show, because I'm willing to bet that you don't get that accuracy rate. Not that I can, say for sure or anything else, but yeah, getting one right would have been kind of impressive. But what if we were just to do coin tosses? Like, now it's a 50-50 shot. How many coin tosses in a row should make it convincible?
In a row, I would say 3 or 4, in my own opinion.
My gosh, I can get 3 or 4 right. I've done magic shows where somebody in the audience has gotten 9 in a row.
They might actually have some magic in them. Then
No, they actually don't. They don't. It's a thing here. In much the same way that there's like 1,500 people watching right now. If every single one of them typed what card they predicted, we would expect 28 people to correctly guess the 10 of spades. Out of the 1,500 or so people that are watching right now, you'd expect about 28 people to do it. The thing that I've done in the magic show, well, I didn't do this in front of a large audience, but it works, and I've seen it done in a large audience. If you have everybody in the audience with a coin, and you need to turn off the show because I can hear myself behind you. But if you have everybody in the audience with a coin, you what?
Sorry.
Anyway, and have all of them flip the coin. I'm still hearing myself.
I exited the entire YouTube tab.
Well,
so it's not me.
Okay. Yep. It doesn't matter. So you have everybody in the audience, let's say 500 people. They all flip a coin, and you have everybody who got heads stay standing, and everybody else sits down. Then you just have the people who flipped heads flip again, and everybody who gets heads stays standing, and everybody else sits down. You can keep doing this, and eventually you'll get one person standing who's flipped 6, 7, 8, 9 heads in a row. And there's absolutely nothing remarkable about that, except that you will have been in a room where you can say, I watched someone toss a fair coin and get 9 heads in a row. That's amazing. Except that it's not only not amazing, it will happen every time pretty much under those circumstances. That's just what the odds say. But by phrasing it as I watched one person flip a coin and get it right 9, or get a heads 9 times in a row, it sounds impressive. Similarly, if you're sitting here asking, your pendulum yes or no questions, and you think you have a high 80, 90% rate, you need to test it in a way that can determine what the accuracy rate is. If you're asking life questions that you can massage or, Goddess Hecate, should I, go to this event? And, those aren't questions that are testable. But if you actually care about whether or not your method of communicating is testable, you can do something like this. If the thing is, your assumptions here on Hecate in general is that when I invited Hecate into my room, that she came and saw the card and then did not tell you the correct card. So either you're wrong about whether Hecate can come to my room, see my card, whether they exist, whether they can communicate with you, or Hecate's fucking with you. Like she came over, looked at the card, and then said, I'm just going to tell her ace of clubs, it would have been, like, why wouldn't Hecate just, if she knew she was getting it wrong, why wouldn't she just say no? And so what ends up happening, which you might do, Katie, I don't know, is you'll take this and say that failure was yours, not Hecate's. It was yours. Hecate knew what the card was. You did something wrong in the communication. But if that's the case, then already the communication is unreliable because you're involved.
I agree.
Yeah. I can't believe
both of those could work.
Yeah. I have
that she could
difficulty
be messing with me or that I could be wrong.
Yeah. Now, I'll leave it as an exercise for you because we've got to get to super chats and wrap the show up because I don't want to keep Mandisa here till like midnight. Actually, I would love to, but we're not going to. But here's the thing. If you actually care about whether or not this is true, I've just given an example of one way to potentially test this. You can do the same test by taking a card from a deck without you seeing it and putting it face down, using your pendulum over it, and just start easy. Is it red or black? Then go to, is it hearts, clubs, spades, or diamonds? And then work on the value and see what your actual accuracy rate is. If you get an accuracy rate for any of those that's significantly better than chance, you might be able to qualify for what used to be the James Randi Educational Foundation's $1 million prize. But if you could actually demonstrate a rate beyond chance, you and your pendulum, whether you're actually communicating with Hecate or just an inner thought or whatever else, if you could actually significantly show that you have a high accuracy rate, you could be a billionaire in no time.
I'll keep that in mind. These loans are getting expensive. But I value science at the base of things. So I will be looking into doing something, testing the accuracy.
Well, if you value science,
I admit that I was wrong humbly.
Yeah, no worries. If you value science, there's one thing you definitely need to look into, Katie, especially since you're using a pendulum for this, and that is something called the ideomotor reflex. IDEOMOTOR. Ideomotor. The ideomotor reflex. And you'll find videos about, because the pendulum thing is, well, you'll find it. Go have fun.
I mean, yeah.
I'll look into it.
I'm just going to say it. The pendulum looks, I think of Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum. It sounds pretty dangerous there.
It's really just a crystal on a string, or it could be something else.
Well, mine's metal, but
yeah, that's why I was saying, yeah, like it could be any number of things. It's soothsaying. The Bible's against it, which means it must be good. On that note, Katie, I gotta go.
I'll look into that reflex, like you said.
Cool. Let me know what you find out, Katie. I'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.
Bye, Katie.
Thank you so much for calling. All right, Mandisa, I'm going to make some announcements real quick, and then we're going to read all the super chats that came in that were over $10. My apologies that we're not going to stay here all night reading all the ones that were under that, but $10.
I just have one more thing before the show ends, but yes, go ahead, Matt. Please do your thing.
Now let me get these announcements, and then we'll have your announcements, and then we'll do the super chats. So as a reminder, coming up this week, tomorrow's the Transatlantic Call-In Show. That's at 2 p.m. Central with Arden and Josie. On Sunday at 2 p.m. is the Sunday show with myself and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Sunday show after dark is going to be Aron Ra and John Gleason at 7 p.m. on Sunday. Monday's Skeptalk is at 6 p.m. with Erika Gutsick-Gibbon. On Tuesdays, Chewed Gum is going to be Arden and Alyssa. And next Wednesday, it's going to be me and Arden. So you're going to get to see Arden on 3 shows over the next week. And anybody out there that isn't already going, wow, I can't believe we're so lucky this week. I don't even want to know you. But your announcements, Mandisa, go for it.
Yeah, so once again, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and please support the Ends Mid-Year campaign. And if you are in or near the New York City tri-state area, on June 24th and 25th, Godless Gospel, which is the ensemble that myself and others like Cynthia McDonald and Candace Gorham are part of. We are performing in New York City at Theater 555 off Broadway. We would love for you to come down and hear us sing, have fun, do activism. So yes, if you are in New York City or the tri-state area, or if you would like to take a short trip up there, please come check out Godless Gospel at Theater 555, which is off Broadway. It is produced by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Shout out to Dan Barker and Andre Forbes, who is the creative director. But yes, please do check us out at the end of June in New York City.
Links to that are down in the description below the event, although we might have put the Godless Gospel thing isn't Ghost Spell with SPELL, is it? It's just regular gospel.
Yeah,
GOSP.
Oh, I just can't spell. That's my bad.
We have it misspelled down there. But if you look down below there's a link to the Godless Gospel event page. It's ffrf.org/outreach-events. It's right there in the link. And then there's also a link to the Black Nonbelievers fundraiser. Let's get our super chats going. $19.99 from Greg Murkowski. Greg says, glad to see Mandisa again. Woohoo. I can't do a woohoo. It's too late in the night for me to get that high to start with. I was just going to say, we need a big heap of Andrew Seidel about now. Any chance you could Trey Crowder on sometime? I don't know, Trey. I don't know that we've ever even met. I think we might have briefly. We might have been at one thing. I will see what I can do. But with people that I've never met, I don't know what, whether they have an interest or they could be like, oh, I don't want to do anything with Matt, whatever, who knows, but we'll see. Appreciate the suggestion there, Greg.
Who wouldn't want to do this with you, Matt? This is fun.
Oh, I can name 20 people off the top of my head who definitely don't want to do a show with me. And at least 18 of them, I'm like, good, get fucked.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
All right. Your turn.
Okay. So from Etienne Unson, love seeing Mandisa on. I highly recommend Durante Lamar. Durante is a up-and-coming content creator, former pastor. We're actually going to be working on an event for next year, Matt, so we will be keeping you posted on that. Awesome. So who would win in a rap battle, Matt or David Hume? That I don't know, Matt, but maybe you can answer.
I would win because, first of all, David Hume isn't familiar with rap. And I go all the way back to Run DMC, Curtis Blow, and
yes,
I
you do. Yes,
most of Eminem stuff just off the top of my head without missing a word. But not Rap God. Can't do Rap God.
Right.
When it comes to Rap God,
I agree. Matt would win. Yes.
$49.99. Even if I just mimicked somebody, I'd still be David Hume. $49.99 from John Kennel. Thank you so much, John. The last two GOP presidential popular vote wins were 2004 and 1988. The Electoral College is destroying this country. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a rough go. We need to make some changes, and we can't even get on the same page to get things in a position to make the changes. So we're kind of screwed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, $10 from Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Make sure you are registered to vote. Check the rules for voter registration in your state, and there should be a way to validate that your registration at your state's Secretary of website. Yeah, to validate that it's yes, that is absolutely correct. You can check that even through Facebook and social media platforms. They have ways that you can check to see if you are registered and also who your representatives are. I highly recommend you can. I think the Secular Coalition for America has a way to check that as well. So at secular.org. So yeah, check that out. Yes, absolutely.
Your state Secretary of State website. There are plenty of other organizations do as well, but definitely if you're not registered to vote, get yourself registered. If you don't vote, well, call in another time and I'll talk to you about why that's a really bad move. But $20 from Perch Dragon. Seeing Mandisa reminded me that I'm late donating to Black Nonbelievers. Please help support this amazing organization. Much love from Phoenix, Arizona. Matt, you're gay, homie. Yes.
Yes.
All of it, I guess.
Hey, I know who that is. Such a shout out. Thank you so much. Yes. $10 from Sheridan Bernasconi. It is so good to see Mandisa again. Thank you.
That's
Great
fact.
show as always. Yes.
Hey, we knew this was going to happen. $9.99 from
Yay.
Daniel Robles. Robles. I don't know. Daniel's got a snake. Daniel's donated before. I like Daniel. Anybody with a snake in their design gets credit. Matter of fact, wait, is that the Daniel that I met in Orlando? You don't have to donate again to answer that question, but I'll watch chat.
Okay. $10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Mandisa, have you considered running for Grand Empress of Earth? Or you feel like that's just too much, just president? Love seeing you back. Your perspective always generates new thoughts. Matt YGH. Oh, that's too much responsibility. I mean, shoot. I would just, I don't know. I would just settle for being, president of Black Nonbelievers, which needs to be a paid position. Hint. So please donate to be in so that can happen.
I don't know.
And that we can.
Grand Empress of Earth would be. Grand Empress of Earth would be pretty
It probably
cool.
would be a better place, though. Yeah, the world might be a better place if I was. So
I don't know how you get that position as Grand Empress of Earth, but given what we're currently facing,
yeah,
I think it would definitely be the lesser of two evils to have Mandisa as Grand Empress of Earth. So I'm supportive for now until she runs against Arden, and then I'm less supportive then because I got to side with my girl. $10 from X Million. Was it just only Jesus, the man who was crucified? If so, there was no God sacrifice. Yeah, but where does it say there was a God sacrifice? If Jesus as God died on the cross, he's mortal and not very godlike. Yeah, it doesn't say that. It's a confusing thing. It's very confusing, and it's going to depend on whose doctrine you're talking about. There are some who Jesus was fully man. Some say Jesus was fully God. Some say Jesus was fully man and fully God, which is just bizarre. Generally, the view is that the spirit can't die no matter what. And so when the body died, that was the human element that died, but not the spirit and not the God aspect. But there's no way to resolve this because they can't even demonstrate that he existed, that he said the things he said, that he was killed, or that he was resurrected. I mean, it is, we gloss over that a lot. And I, of course, have issues with my mythicist friends because I think they overstep by asserting, a fiction when the most we can actually demonstrate is it's not confirmed nonfiction. So it's in this, at least a vague thing, but that gets glossed over. I think one of the things that the mythicists do that help us is by constantly putting that little bug, that little fly in the soup of, yeah, but you're believing all of this story. I watched William Lane Craig address something just the other day, where I think Ben Shapiro asked him a question about, knowing that Jesus was God or Jesus was resurrected. And the way he confirms the resurrection, everything about it just comes from the biblical story. It's the remarkable fact that Jesus's disciples became convinced that he was resurrected. Yeah, but what they were convinced of is independent of what was true. And I don't even know that those disciples were convinced. I know that there's a story that says they were convinced. So you can't just take anecdotes and pile them up and think that they add up to something. It's just not going to work that way. But
thank you for donating to be in as well. So
yes, thank you.
$20 from Credo Mott. Driving wedges is the only thing keeping the population docile towards the government and infighting instead. There's hope, though, from seeing the push towards secular humanism I've encountered on the line. Good, yes.
Oops. Thank you, Credo Mott. I'm optimistic in many ways, and Yet there are days, Jimmy and I were talking about today, and while I can't and wouldn't show you the conversation, I know I mentioned it earlier about being optimistic, pessimistic, and looking for the realistic, and it's incredibly difficult. But both Jimmy and myself, despite the 34 felony conviction, we're both convinced that there is a strong likelihood that Trump will win the election. I've never wanted to be wrong more than I am in thinking that. And I can't even completely quantify it, but it's why, but from now until the election, once I get done with a couple of projects this month related to the snakes and everything else, basically a good chunk of July, August, September, and October up to the election in November is going to be addressing the facts that people seem to be getting wrong. Not that Biden is the best thing since sliced bread, because he's not. But that not only is it not merely the lesser of two evils, which would be enough, but it's genuinely a good option and the better option. But here we go. $10 from William Mattis. Hey, William, I'm making onion, mushroom, and miso soup tonight. I don't feel well, but yeah, I would probably love that. Arden would not, because it's got mushrooms. I'm sorry you don't feel well, though.
I like mushrooms. Yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed the show.
I appreciate you, William. Thank you so much.
All right. $10 from Cynthia. Just dropping a line to say hi, Matt, and support my sister from another Mr. Mandisa. Yeah. And Sin, I'm sorry. We just got to check your email. I just got notice that Godless Gospel in Manhattan is going to be canceled or postponed. Let me not say canceled. It's going to be postponed. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, it's better y'all hear it here than anywhere else. So it's going to be postponed in Manhattan. So there's reasons for it.
So the one that's coming up June 24th.
Yeah, the ones that I just mentioned, yes, they are going to be postponed. But if you go to the FFRF's YouTube channel, you can see the two performances that we did at the 2022 and 2020, mostly the 2023 convention. And there's an episode of Free Thought Matters. So if you would like to hear the absolutely fantastic music that we are doing so far, you definitely want to check that out. So thanks, Sin. But yes, fundraiser is still open, though. Fundraiser is still active. But yes, sorry.
$10 from Steve660. Matt, I'll send you $10 each and every time I hear that little bitch Alexander call your show. Alexander, the only actual effect of your efforts is to financially enrich the line, Jimmy and Matt. Cool. I hope he calls in all day, every day, because I can hang up pretty quick. And if each call is $10, Alexander, if you want to cut, we can. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm not going to set up a scam on one of our. Yep.
Right. $39.99 from Roland. Thanks for the awesome show tonight, guys. It was fire. Yes.
Fire. Thank you so much, Roland. Much appreciated. €10 from Johnny Luca Rogers. Can you guys give me some advice to quit smoking? I tried many things, but I keep going back to it even after long periods of not smoking. Why can't my rational mind stop me from this addiction? Thanks. Mandisa, did you ever smoke?
I did not, but I come from a family of smokers.
I did. I smoked a fuck ton. I smoked 4 packs a day during the Gulf War.
Wow.
I smoked, I quit cold turkey for a little bit and went back to it because I started dating somebody who smoked. And then when Beth and I got together, her birthday is October 30th, which is also our wedding anniversary. We got married on her birthday, but also I quit smoking on her birthday. She didn't like it. And I just said, okay, I'll quit. I don't have any good advice on how to do it. I just did it. It was just, I'm not going to smoke. And the one thing I did that screwed up is I had chewed tobacco when I was a kid. Kodiak was my preferred brand way back in the olden days. For dip, and for Big Chaw, it was like Levi Garrett. But I switched to snus, little chewing tobacco packets that are pasteurized. I'm not recommending this at all. As a matter of fact, I'm recommending against it because it was basically giving me the constant nicotine feed, and it tasted like candy, and you didn't have to spit. You could swallow it. It was, and you could do it anywhere and everywhere. And in part because of doing that, not only was I able to quit smoking, but now I'm going to have half my mouth replaced. Getting ready to have oral surgery for some damage to my teeth and gums that relate to that. So I definitely don't recommend that. I don't know that I have any good advice. I just did it. And I hope that you find a way to do it. I think you just got to care more about life not smoking than the momentary pleasure. Because I'll tell you this, I don't hate smoke. So there are some ex-smokers that become the most self-righteous, smug. I could stand. No. If I'm at the club and there's people smoking, smells good to me. And on one or two rare occasions over the last 15 years, I've had a cigarette or half a cigarette, and every single time I do, I remember why I enjoyed it, and I also immediately remember why I hated and why I quit. And it's because I got tired of every piece of clothing that I had and every room in my house smelling like cigarettes, even when I was smoking only outside. I'm a little more sensitive to smells. And while I love the smell of a freshly lit cigarette, the stale smell of the smoke that hangs around and gets in the curtains and the clothes.
It's
and the
not cute at all.
I fucking hate it. Just lick an ashtray every time you feel like you want to have a cigarette. That might do it.
I'm very big on, because you mentioned that you would that be considered snuff, Matt, or whatever it was you chewed on as a child?
Snus, it's tobacco. Snuff, you tend to sniff, but.
Oh, okay. There are a lot of things that impact us in our younger days that we don't realize that we're carrying into our adulthood, which is the reason why we may keep certain habits. And this is something that I had to personally work through, because even though I don't smoke, I am diabetic, but I do stress eat. I eat a lot when I stress. I have worked on that. I started working out 4 years ago. I do it consistently now. But I realized that a lot of things that impacted me was due to things that I had to process in my childhood. And I think a lot of people may not realize what may be affecting them, or as children that bring that going unchecked, or even if you don't get clinical help for it, you don't realize how you're carrying it and how that comes out in the different things you do. So it might be beneficial. And I'm not saying that, you just had an awful childhood or whatever, but it just might be worth digging into why you smoke in the first place and what could trigger you to smoke, and learning what you can do to try to quit and see what better works for you. And I don't think quitting anything, I think it's always better to try to wean yourself off of it, but if cold turkey works better for you, then great. You definitely have to find what works better for you, though.
Yeah, I would always say cutting back, if you can't entirely quit, it's probably still preferable from a health perspective, but I'm not here to give unsolicited medical advice to people. This one's yours?
Right. All right. $100 from Relly Rel. Just wanted to show a little support. Also, shout out to Mandisa. I saw you from the Black Christian versus Black Atheist video. It's always a pleasure to hear your perspective. Thank you for supporting the line, Relly Rel. I think Matt and Arden and all the folks at the line deserve that support. And I must say that it was very interesting to be on that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that network, Matt, Jubilee Media. I had never heard of that show before they reached out and asked, could we find anyone for the show? And so initially I was asked like to recruit people to be guests on it. And I'm like, okay, well, they're based in LA. I said, we're based in Atlanta, but I will reach out to our network. But then they wanted to interview me for it, and I went through the interview process with the casting director, and they really liked what I had to say. So I submitted the application. They chose me for it. It was like a 2-week process. They flew me out to LA, and it was a very, very short turnaround. My feet were swollen by the time I got back to Atlanta, but it was a really, really good and interesting experience. I mean, they have 8.6 million subscribers, and I wasn't aware of that. So I was like, wow. Whenever I mentioned it, they were like, wow, I love Middle Ground. I'm like, why have I not heard of this show? But I appreciate being able to give my perspective on the show and also lend to a very, very important conversation. It shows that we are still needed out there. You know, the comments are very, very interesting. It's almost at 1 million views now, which is kind of the norm for their videos. But I appreciate being able to lend my voice to it. And fun fact, Darius, who was the other fully atheist on the show, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me telling you this, his dad is a pastor. And I asked him how it went over. He said his dad preached a whole sermon about how he and I are going to hell. And I'm like, oh, great. Yay. So, yes, that was very interesting.
Well, hell would be preferable to spending more time with his dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
$10 from Storm Chaser Noah. First of all, thank you so much, Relic. That very, very generous. Appreciate it. $10 from Storm Chaser Noah, and thank you, Noah. Mormon asked me what is required for a tree to bear fruit the other day, and I replied with, well, for one, that it isn't cursed by God to be fruitless. Keep up the awesome work, guys. Yeah, I had genuinely I planted a fig tree in my backyard. I've planted lots of trees. 3 of them have survived, despite the fact that my yard's pretty small. But I planted a fig tree and a lemon tree. The lemon tree died almost immediately. The fig tree died back and grew again, and died back and grew again. And it never got more than a foot tall, despite having huge leaves. So I can see why fig leaves tend to get used for covering up genitalia in pictures. But I literally just mowed down the last remnant of the fig tree the other day. Evidently, some god has cursed it to not bear fruit or even grow. So, but my traveling redbud looks gorgeous and had a rabbit basically creating a hutch underneath it the other day, and I got a small backyard. So,
10 pounds from Johnny Luca Rogers. Mandisa, it's great to have you here. Love your hair. Thank you. And absolutely adore your smile. Do come in more often. Hugs from Brussels. Producers, do y'all hear that? I'd love to be back again more often. Yes. Yay.
Yeah, my producer's already queuing up other opportunities for you, I'm sure. $12 from Cynthia McDonald. Again? Girl, you're awesome. I then need to be vice empress if Mandisa is grand empress. Yeah.
You're hired.
You guys are a ticket that I would support. It's a good ticket.
Yes. Oh my gosh. $10 from Chris. I have a flaky friend. I need to meet them at 2 p.m. I often stress myself out trying to overly prepare for possible consequences from them being late. Am I guilty of a slippery slope fallacy? I mean, as someone who despises tardiness, I'm not sure. I think you just might not like them, being late, or that. I'm not sure how to answer that one, Matt.
It's possible there's a slippery slope fallacy in there. It's more like, yeah. So I hate being late. I work to be early so that I'm not late. And I think it's just about, I don't ever want to be the problem. I am the problem on occasion. I fully recognize that. But I don't want to be the one that's inconsiderate and inconveniencing others. And so there may or may not be a slippery slope fallacy, but I don't think it matters. Whether you've made an argument that is fallacious or with a slippery slope or some other fallacy or whatever, just if you're just being hypervigilant, if you're stressing yourself out over it, you might want to go to seculartherapy.org and find somebody to talk to see if there's a particular characteristic of your behavior that you can adjust so that you're not getting stressed out about it.
Right.
It may also just be the fact that the number of things I stress myself out over is pretty high, but I think if we got Arden to chime in, I think she would confirm that while I might get angry, I'm usually angry for a few seconds. And the things that stress me out, I tend to have my stress moment and get over them. And the exceptions to those are long-term sources of anxiety, like the mail. The mail is always a source of anxiety for me.
I can confirm to the point where it pisses me off because I'll be like, no, motherfucker, I'm still angry about this. And you're moved on already.
That's fair. And that's one of the many reasons Arden and I make a good team is that I don't stay mad. Don't get me wrong. There are people who I will despise for the rest of my life. I will be angry at them, but I don't let it affect me, because if I do that, they still have an impact on my life. It's just, they will never be a part of my life. I've scrubbed them from my life. And the other reason that we fit is my mail anxiety is resolved by the fact that Arden goes and gets the mail.
Awesome. And let me just say one last thing, Chris. If your friend is constantly late, that is a source of inconsideration on their part, and you may want to rethink that. If that is something that definitely impacts you, then you might want to definitely reconsider that portion of your friendship, because that is, yeah, absolutely. What they're doing right there is pretty shitty, and that's not cool.
But if they're not worried about whether or not you're late, and you're the only one worried about whether or not you're late, cut yourself some slack. I hate being late, but I also know when I tried my best and some things were just beyond my control. $10 from Monkey to Typewriter regarding Mandisa for president. Just imagine the portrait after 44 and a half crusty white dudes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
much
for
better.
president of the United States. Yeah. It was the 44 and a half math there that threw me off. I was like, whoa, wait, what?
Okay, $20 from Dante Verona. Hey, Dante. Matt, I won't press it hard, but there is a clip I sent on Patreon Messenger. There is considerable evidence against a Trump victory. Democrats have been consistently overperforming ever since Roe was overturned.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
I've seen,
I mean,
yeah, Dante, I've seen that. I haven't seen the clip that you're talking about, because we had a sick snake, and I'm dealing with stuff related to that. But so I haven't seen the actual clip, or I haven't seen what you sent, but I may have actually seen the same clip from somebody else. And it's not that I'm saying I don't trust the polls. It's in 2016, I was so confident and thought that the polls and the data were actually on my side that I scoffed at the notion that he would be president. I'm being more cautious now, and I'm doing it because I'm in a position, nobody should take this the wrong way. I'm just some fucking guy that you all watch. I'm not claiming to have any expertise in any of this. You all should not be saying, Matt said, so therefore. Unfortunately, I'm in a position where what I say carries weight with some people. And if I were to say that, the data shows that, there's considerable evidence against a likely Trump victory, I think saying that could inspire some people to complacency and not being as involved and encouraging. I'm not going to stop until it's done. That's it. I'm not being dishonest. I genuinely think there's a strong chance that he could win, for various factors, but I definitely am not going to stop harping on it until the election's over. And if he loses, I hope the Republican Party convinces him. Actually, at that point, I don't know whether I'm hoping they convince him to run again or to not run again. Because if he just keeps,
is there any convincing of that? I don't know. Jeez.
He lost in 20. If he loses in 24, then do you want him to run again in 28? When he's 4 years older and still a felon and maybe, dealing with it. I don't know.
Right.
I hope that whoever we get after this next election, when we get to 28, I hope they're unlike anybody who's been president in the last 30 years.
This is yours,
I
Matt.
I wish it was Mandisa, but
you want me to take it? I can take it. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, $9.99 from also Polaire. I will never vote Trump, and I was going to vote for Biden, but I don't know if I can or should vote for a man who was doing nothing or aiding a genocide. Any help with the massive mental twister I'm in?
Yes.
So Matt said earlier in the show.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm saying you addressed it earlier about him taking some, reflection and consideration on his position. So, but yeah.
If you genuinely think, you say, I will never vote Trump, and I was going to vote for Biden, but I don't know if I can. If you don't vote for Biden, you are saying you're okay with Trump. I mean, one of those two men is going to be president, unless something dramatic changes between now and election day. One of those two is going to be president. And so you could say, ooh, one of them is skin cancer and one of them's athlete's foot. And I'll never vote for skin cancer, but I really don't know if I can vote for athlete's foot. But if you don't vote for athlete's foot, you're saying that you're okay with the potential consequence of getting skin cancer. If you don't vote for Biden, you are saying you're okay with Trump, because it is a straight up, dichotomy. And so I'm going to be making all kinds of, I'll be putting up videos with actual data and stuff on why I'm in favor of voting for Biden. But if I picked out and said, first of all, I don't think it's fair to say that Biden is doing nothing, nor that he's aiding a genocide. I think both of those are oversimplifications of the complexities of international treaties and who is an ally and what we're doing. I think there are plenty of things that he's done wrong and that I would do different. But I don't think that he's sitting there going, genocide is good, let's support it. And I think that is a genuine consideration. But at the end of the day, one of those two is going to be president. If you don't vote, you're saying, I don't care who winds up winning. And to shrug off the one you would prefer to vote for because they've done something that you object to, I can understand why that feels like it's the right thing to do, but it's not. And if you think that the right would have done anything different when it comes to Gaza and our support for Israel, you're nuts. Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, all these, they don't go after Biden on Gaza at all because they know he's doing exactly or pretty close to the same thing that they would do. So the situation doesn't improve if he doesn't win. It actually gets worse. It's like, here's 100 things right and 4 things wrong versus 97 things wrong and 8 things right, or whatever. I did the math stupidly. But anyway, if you don't vote at all, or you vote for somebody who has 0 chance of winning, like worm brain, all you're doing is saying you're okay with the worst option. And the final super chat for today. $10 from X Million. I had to send another $10 to express my deepest regret for getting the lovely Mandisa's name wrong. I'm so embarrassed. Matt, you're gay, homie. And of course, the second I said it was the last super chat, this one comes in. So Mandisa, all you. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. First, it's okay. It's okay, X Million. Mandinka is actually a tribe in Africa, though, in West Africa. My name happens to be South African, but even though you pronounce my name wrong, it's still a name. It's it's the name of something. So yeah, that's just a FYI there. I nerd out on this kind of stuff, Matt. So $10 from Michaela. Do you think Black Hebrew numbers are rising? Also, I had internet issues and apologize for taking a position I don't really have. Great show. If they are, they need to stop. Goodness gracious.
I don't have any data on the popularity of it.
Yeah.
I'd say that it's at least increased some, because 10 years ago I'd never heard of them, and now I've run into them on 6th Street. So there's certainly the impression that the numbers are rising.
They have a center in Riverdale, which is like 20 minutes from where I am in the Atlanta area. And so they are still, very active. I know they are still, they're definitely around. They used to just be in New York and in your northern areas, but now they are expanding. So it is very interesting to see that. But goodness gracious, I really hope they don't. I hope they take whatever information that has some nuggets of truth in it, or the children do, and say, you know what, I don't think this is true. I'm going to actually do some good research and come out of it. I really do. But yes, they are very cult-like, and I highly suggest that you might want to be very, very careful engaging them.
Let me put a pretty little bow on tonight. First of all, a huge thank you to Mandisa for agreeing to come on. Can't wait to do this again sometime, and when we get to hang out when we're in the same place, because that hasn't happened in like 4 fucking ever.
It has. It needs to happen again soon. Yes.
Yep. Give the channel a like and a subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things you need to do to actually find out when other shows are going on. We got shows almost all the time. Tomorrow it'll be the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Arden and Josie at 2 p.m. Sunday, there's 2 shows. The Sunday show at 2 p.m. with myself and Eric, and the Sunday show after dark at 7 p.m. with Aron and John Gleason. Erika Guts at Gibbon will be here for Skeptalk the following Monday. Arden and Alyssa will be doing Chewed Gum on Tuesday. And for those asking, Eve's on vacation and doing really cool stuff. So we miss you, Eve. And Wednesday, it'll be me and Arden on the Hang Up. It'll just be us from our home talking about what's going on, having fun, enjoying Pride Month, making all the bigots just lose their damn minds. You can also go to linemerch.com and QANAline.com to find other ways to support, promote the show, including patreon.com/calltheline. But my personal Patreon, which I've got to do a better job of advertising, patreon.com/atheist debates. I've already put up 4 videos to end the month of May, which I'll be going live, and I'll probably be doing some of them live on my Twitch channel as premieres, which is what I did at the end of last month. I've already got the videos queued up and scheduled for the rest of June and part of July. So that's all there. And down below this channel's description is not only the link to the Godless Gospel event page, which you should still go look at, even though it has been postponed, because you will find other information there. You'll be able to see other versions of it. And if it turns out this gets unpostponed or shifted, you'll find good information there. And there's also a link to the Facebook page for Black Nonbelievers fundraiser, which is going on right now. Please don't just say, ooh, Trump's been convicted of 34 felony accounts. Woohoo, we won, it's over. there's a lot of work to do between now and election day, and potentially after as well. And while I don't throw this phrase around very often, Andrew Seidel and I, last time he was on, I think it was the last time he was on, talked about the potential for something like a civil war. I genuinely hope absolutely nothing, even in the ballpark of that, ever happens again. I would love, people who do this. Matt's so woke. Matt's woke this, woke this. We were talking about gender roles, and I was like, how many wars were started by women again? How much worse off would we be if it was basically a call to chew gum last night where somebody suggested that maybe the patriarchy is a good thing. And I'm like, only the dumbest man I've ever met can say shit like that. Patriarchy hurts everybody. It hurts me. It hurts the dudes that you look at that you think are the most macho, because it's absolutely encouraging them that macho-ness is a good thing, and machismo and these stereotypical roles. All of them are potentially problematic. I can't wait for the day when the world is run by women. What did you say, Matt? Is that the most woke thing ever? You're just a little beta boy cock who just wants women in charge. I think my street cred on being the head motherfucker in charge is pretty strong. I kind of speak my mind and say and do what I want. And when I tell you that I can't wait for the day that the world is run by women, it's because, if nothing else, that's an experiment we desperately need to try, because the current one seems to continually be failing and getting worse. When you have half the population that thinks the world is the opposite of the way it is, and they are willing to follow a convicted felon, serial liar to the ends of the earth, all because somebody fed them information, both false information about the way the world is, false information about the way the world should be, false information about what the supernatural realm is like. It all builds up together. And what are we doing? We're helping billionaires become mega billionaires. We are helping the rich become richer. We are doing nothing to absolutely protect and instantiate equality. We are fucking up. So call me whatever you want, say whatever you want, call it Trump derangement syndrome. I don't care. I want a better world. And what my perception of a better world is, I'll put up against anybody on the right who says they also want a better world. Because objectively, the things that they think are better are not, and we know they're not. This is beyond ridiculous. Lots of work to do. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to our moderators, to our call screener, and mostly to Auden Hoff for producing from down there. Let's roll a list of all our patron producers, and then we'll end it with patreon.com/calltheline once that scroll is done. I'm just vamping, filling time. Y'all are awesome. Thanks for the supers. Thanks for the good questions and good calls. And hey, if in fact we heard from Goddess Hecate, I wonder why she doesn't seem to know what an ace is any more than Katie did.